Chapter 1484. Lu Yurong scoffed. 100 of you against one. Let's not say it's an unfair win, but we're using formations to help. What a joke! How dare you say that? Li Yaoyang frowned at Lu Yurong and said coldly, We're relying on martial arts, not formations. All right. Chu Li nodded and smiled. Then let's compete with martial arts. Come here, Li Yaoyang said. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. I won't go over. If you want to fight, come over. I'm not the one who wants to kill you. You're the one who wants to kill me. Let's drag this out. As he spoke, he sat by the campfire and drank from the water bag beside him. He kicked the elder in purple away. The elder in purple floated up like a rag doll and landed far away with a bang. There were a few stones under him. He twitched a few times but did not move again. The elder's cultivation was crippled and his acupuncture points were sealed. He could not move and could only endure the pain. Compared to the ants gnawing on his meridians, being hit by the stones was just a small pain. He now knew why the injured screamed. It was a terrible feeling. It was numb, itchy, and painful. He wanted to tear himself into pieces to relieve the itch. Chu Li was angry that they came to kill him. Although he could avoid the death penalty, he could not escape punishment. Not only would his martial arts be crippled, but he would also have to suffer. They would want to commit suicide in the end. Unfortunately, their acupuncture points were sealed. They could not commit suicide even if they wanted to. Lu Yurong sat beside him and handed him a fresh fruit. It was red and looked very tempting. Chu Li took it and took 2 bites. Then, he leisurely looked at the crowd outside the pine forest and shook his head with a smile. All of you can wait outside. I'll activate the blessing formation later and see how many formation-breaking talismans you have. As he spoke, he took out a pile of formation-breaking talismans from the bag beside him. He picked them up one by one and looked at them carefully under the sunset. He put them aside and looked at the next one. He seemed to be checking the quality of the formation-breaking talismans. He picked and picked, which made the 52 masters furious. Every formation-breaking talisman was very precious. This time, the Great One Palace had sacrificed a lot to take out so many formation-breaking talismans. It was unknown how many years it would be before they would use them again. In the end, Chu Li had benefited from it. Chu Li picked through the items and finally kept 10 of them. He stuffed them into his inner pocket and pointed at the rest. You keep them. You might be able to break a small formation occasionally, but you won't be able to break a big formation. Lu Yurong put them away with a smile. Not to mention how precious the materials used to make these jade talismans were. They were all made of the finest jade. Any one of them could be exchanged for a lot of things. 52 people took a deep breath and did not approach. They were determined not to be fooled. Let's go. We should leave first, Li Yaoyang said in a low voice. Everyone nodded, feeling that this was the only way. Once they got close to the pine forest, he would definitely set up a new array formation. Against him, formation-breaking talismans would not be that useful. If they hadn't caught him off guard, they wouldn't have been able to break his array formation. Watching them leave, Lu Yurong frowned and said, This is troublesome. They will definitely follow us like hungry wolves, staring at us. Once we make a mistake, they will deal a fatal blow. Chu Li sized up the 52 masters who were gradually leaving. Lu Yurong said, What's worse is that they might not be able to set up a formation. Chu Li said, Don't worry. There are no formations ahead. Formations are not that easy to set up. Formations were all about talent. There were only a few formation masters in the world. Moreover, formations consumed too much energy. Once trapped in a formation, there would be no time to cultivate. Most of the time, their martial arts would not be strong enough and they would not dare to participate in something like this. Lu Yurong said, The power of a formation is really strong, but you were able to kill one with one palm. That's quite shocking. She once again experienced Chu Li's power. These masters who dared to kill Chu Li were not weak. They were the top group of grandmasters. Yet they could not even block a palm or a punch from him. It was clear how big the gap between their cultivation levels was. Chu Li's cultivation level was unfathomable. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. His omniscient mirror kept watching the 52 masters. He watched them leave the pine forest and reach the place where they were lying in ambush. They felt that it was the safest place. When they reached the pine forest halfway up the mountain, they let out a long sigh of relief. They could finally relax and relax. This Chu Li is more powerful than the rumors say. Someone shook his head and sighed. The more powerful he is, the more we have to kill him. Otherwise, if he becomes our enlightened master, the Fu dynasty will lose face. That's true. He must die. He thinks we're doing this because of the third prince. He must die no matter what. If he doesn't die, the Fu dynasty's dignity will be in jeopardy. How do we kill him now? Why don't we get more masters here? In my opinion, we need to hire a formation master. We used the formation breaking talisman incorrectly. The people from the Great One Palace were too careless. The Great One Palace is used to being arrogant. They think that with the formation breaking talisman, they're always successful. This time, we'll teach them a lesson. It's better not to say that. Chu Li must die. If we can't kill him, we won't be able to face anyone. It seems like we can't fight him head-on. Someone suggested, send someone to disturb him so that he can't rest. We'll take turns to rest. We'll attack when he's exhausted. He has a formation to protect him. We have the formation breaking talisman. All right, everyone quickly came up with a plan and began to rest. They rested and prepared to harass Chu Li and Lu Yurong. Lu Yurong was still talking when Chu Li suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared next to the 52 masters. The formation talisman had already been broken, and a dazzling light burst out. Everyone involuntarily closed their eyes and cursed in their hearts. When they opened their eyes again, the scenery had changed. The pine forest had turned into an apricot forest. The fragrance of apricot flowers was strong. The middle-aged man with the formation-breaking talisman waved his long sword with all his might. He knew that Chu Li's target was him. Unfortunately, there was no one around to help him. He was not confident that he could kill Chu Li alone. He could only activate his secret skill. The light from his sword suddenly exploded like lightning. He took out the formation-breaking talisman with his left hand and was about to crush it. He only had one formation-breaking talisman left. Ding! Suddenly, a fist hit his long sword. Although he used his secret skill and doubled his strength, the fist force from the sword still made his body numb and unable to move. Chu Li seemed to have stepped out of thin air and gently waved his hand. His body completely stiffened. His dantian was broken, and his cultivation level flowed away. Up, he could not help but let out a scream. His internal organs were numb and itchy. He wanted to scratch them, but his acupuncture points were sealed and he could not move. He could only scream to relieve the strange pain. Chu Li stretched out his hand and pried the man's fingers away. He took the formation-breaking talisman and shook his head. It's a pity that I couldn't use it. The middle-aged man stared at him fiercely. He was angry and unwilling. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. Don't be so careless next time, he said as he stuffed the formation-breaking talisman back into his pocket. He shook his head and disappeared again. The middle-aged man was furious. He heard a series of screams. He knew that one after another people had fallen into Chu Li's hands. P.S. Update complete. I'm finally done. I didn't delay everyone from watching the gala. Happy New Year. I wish everyone good luck in the new year. May everyone be healthy and happy. Chapter 1485. This time, Chu Li successfully crippled 52 people. Even with the power of the formation, he still felt tired after a few moves. After all, they were all top-notch grandmasters and were not easy to deal with. After he crippled them in one go, he removed the formation. Looking at the people on the ground screaming, Chu Li laughed out loud. Lu Yurong came to him and shook her head with a smile. I didn't expect there to be a formation here. This time, she could conclude that Chu Li predicted their position and set up the formation in advance. He was not a spy, but some other means. He really had the ability to predict. She looked at Chu Li in surprise. Her eyes were bright, as if she wanted to see through him. Chu Li knew what she was thinking and smiled. I was just lucky. I can actually predict where there will be an ambush. Lu Yurong pondered and nodded. It was true that she could predict most of it, but it was very difficult for her to be as accurate as him. It was easier said than done. He was able to cripple hundreds of top-notch grandmasters in one fell swoop. He was more powerful than the Church of the Divine Blood. Chu Li smiled. I finally got my revenge. Lu Yurong nodded. Chu Li suddenly turned and looked in one direction. He closed fists, saluted, and smiled. Who are you? Please show yourself. Well done. A loud voice rang, and a yellow figure floated out of the forest. A middle-aged man in a yellow shirt appeared in front of them. He was a medium build, had a square face, small eyes, and a cold expression. He shook his head. But it's considered light to just cripple their martial arts. Chu Li looked at his clothes and his aura. He hesitated. Is this Goddess Attraction Mountain? Junior Chu? I am Dong Jianxin. The man in the yellow shirt closed fist saluted. Greetings, Senior Dong. Chu Li sighed and closed fist saluted. I didn't expect Senior Dong to come. You are a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain. I can't just sit back and watch. Dong Jianxin scoffed. He looked at the crowd and sneered. These guys are getting bolder. As an inner disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain, Chu Li represented the face of Goddess Attraction Mountain. These guys did not care about Goddess Attraction Mountain at all. More than 100 top-notch masters surrounded him. They really wanted to show Goddess Attraction Mountain their strength. Chu Li smiled. They're not dealing with Goddess Attraction Mountain, but Chu Li from the Ji dynasty. That might not be the case. Dong Jianxin snorted and said, Brother Chu, your thinking is too simple. Who can guess what these guys are thinking? But you're a disciple of our Goddess Attraction Mountain. How can you be killed by these guys? Chu Li nodded and said no more. With just a few words, he had already grasped a hint of Dong Jianxin's temperament. This senior apprentice brother Dong was not a person who was easy to talk to. He was somewhat rigid and stubborn, so it was best to go along with what he said. He smiled and said, Senior brother Dong, this is my wife, Lu Yurong. She just got married. New wife. Dong Jianxin gave Lu Yurong a fist salute and looked at Chu Li with dissatisfaction. Brother Chu, it's normal to be young and frivolous, but you're not an ordinary person. You're a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain. Chu Li smiled. Yes. Dong Jianxin snorted. The disciples of Goddess Attraction Mountain must focus on cultivation. Don't be distracted by matters between men and women. Yes. Chu Li nodded and smiled. But it's hard to control one's emotions, and there's no way to restrain them. As a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain, you'll face more temptations in the future. If you can't control yourself, then you'll be in trouble in the future. Dong Jianxin snorted in dissatisfaction. Let's go. There's nothing to see about these people. He slowly walked around the people on the ground, memorizing everyone's faces. He shook his head and said, Fortunately, not all 7 major sects have gathered. Chu Li said, the people from Plain Maiden Palace and Stargazing Pavilion did not come. It's not strange that Plain Maiden Palace did not come. Dong Jianxin scoffed. But the people from Stargazing Pavilion did not come. That's very unusual. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and made a doubtful expression. Dong Jianxin said, Things like this used to be hosted by Stargazing Pavilion. They have the stargazing technique and can see through the mysteries of the heavens. They can calculate the opponent's position and response. It can be said that there's no mistake. I don't know why they did not come this time. It's strange. Chu Li knew the reason. It was not that Stargazing Pavilion did not want to come, but because they did not dare to. He had the Starstone, the Heavenly Heart technique was perfected, and the level of the Heavens Peering technique was extremely high. Stargazing Pavilion might not be able to calculate his background, so they did not dare to come. A sect like Stargazing Pavilion knew how to seek fortune and avoid calamity. Since they could not calculate it, they naturally would not participate. This time, they could be considered to have taken care of themselves and escaped disaster. Otherwise, he would have taken care of them. Chu Li said, Maybe they're afraid of Goddess Attraction Mountain. Oomph them. Dong Jianxin curled his thick lips and said disdainfully, They have always been unconvinced of us and have always been restless. Now that they have this opportunity to humiliate Goddess Attraction Mountain, they will not let it go. Chu Li smiled. Senior brother Dong, I've always felt that Goddess Attraction Mountain's status is extraordinary and respected by others. If it weren't for Master, Goddess Attraction Mountain would have been swallowed by them long ago. Dong Jianxin laughed coldly. Therefore, as a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain, we must not relax, or else this incident will happen again. Chu Li slowly nodded. Dong Jianxin said, "This is your first lesson since you entered Goddess Attraction Mountain. Now let's go back." "Yes." Chu Li fist saluted. The three of them turned and left, disappearing from the sight of the people lying on the ground in the blink of an eye. After the formation was removed, they could see each other again. Their voices mixed together, screaming and moaning. It was as if they were in hell, sending chills down their spines. Goddess Attraction Mountain, the night was hazy, and a bright moon hung high in the sky, slowly rotating like a jade plate. Standing on top of a palace in Goddess Attraction Mountain, Lu Yurong looked up at the bright moon, her mind at ease. Looking at the bright moon from here, the moon was exceptionally close, exceptionally big, and even more pure and flawless. The moonlight shone on Goddess Attraction Mountain as if it was solid, and it felt cool when it fell on her body. Chu Li glided to her side and smiled. "Can't sleep?" Lu Yurong turned to look at him. "How long do you think I'll stay here? Is it a lifetime?" Chu Li shook his head. "I'll stay here for a while to lie low. Once it's over, I can leave the mountain. But I still have to hide. It's too frustrating to live like this. I know myself." Lu Yurong shook her head. A gust of wind blew, and her white robe fluttered. "I can't take it anymore." Chu Li smiled. "Then what do you want? Kill Tang Yi?" "I can't kill him." Lu Yurong sighed. Chu Li thought for a while. "Cultivate your martial arts first. Goddess Attraction Mountain is a sacred place for cultivation, and others can't get it. This is your opportunity. Cultivate well, and when your martial arts are strong enough, you can settle the score with Tang Yi." "I don't dare to kill him." Lu Yurong looked angry. If she killed Tang Yi, she would become a sinner of the Ji dynasty, and the Fu dynasty would definitely seek revenge from the Ji dynasty. Chu Li shook his head. "It's not necessary to kill him. We can use other methods, such as humiliating or torturing him." Lu Yurong pondered. Suddenly, she pursed her lips and smiled. She shook her head. "I'm being stubborn. All right, I'll go into isolated cultivation." Chu Li smiled. "I'll also go into isolated cultivation for a while. Once we're out, we'll find trouble with Tang Yi." Chapter 1486. Tianshu Courtyard. Imperial residence of King and Xiao Shi was dressed in white and was slowly practicing her fist technique. She was exercising her vital energy and strengthening her body. The Heavenly Heart technique she cultivated focused on her spirit and senses, which was not very beneficial to her body. She usually practiced the Nourishing Fist technique, so her movements were slow, calm, and leisurely. Her apricot gown fluttered in the wind as Su Ru glided towards her and smiled. "Second lady, there's news about Chu Li. Oh, let's hear about it." Xiao Shi scoffed. "This groom must be very proud of himself, right? This time, he has really made a name for himself." Su Ru pursed her lips and smiled. She looked proud. "I guess no one will dare to provoke him anymore." "Say it." Xiao Shi stopped her punches, and Lu Su handed her a towel. The three of them came to the pavilion, and Liu Shu served them tea. Su Ru waved her hand to indicate that she did not want to. She sat in front of Xiao Shi and smiled. More than 100 top-notch grandmasters tried to kill him on the road, but in the end, they were all crippled of their martial arts. Not a single one was spared. They were all annihilated. "Awesome." Xiao Shi slammed the white jade table. Su Ru smiled. "These guys have all been crippled of their martial arts." Among the 8 major sects of the Fu dynasty, other than the Stargazing Pavilion, the Plain Maiden Palace, the Goddess Attraction Mountain, and the Church of the Divine Blood, the other 4 sects have all sent out their masters. This time, they should know how powerful we are. The more powerful he is, the more he can't let Chu Li live. Xiao Shi shook her head and said, "Once he enters Goddess Attraction Mountain, he will become a citizen of the Fu dynasty. He might even be the enlightened master in the future. How can we let him live?" "They can't do anything about it." Su Ru smiled. "He has already entered Goddess Attraction Mountain. He said that another person from Goddess Attraction Mountain came out to receive him, so no one would dare to mess around." Xiao Shi let out a sigh of relief. That's good. We can finally rest for a while. Will they cause trouble for the house of high dukes? Suru stopped smiling and scoffed. They're very likely to pick the soft ones to pinch. More than 100 experts besieging a single person. If they could do such a thing, then they must be shameless. Xiao Shi asked, so that scene was for naught? We might not be able to hide it from the Fu dynasty. Suru nodded. Moreover, they might not be reasonable. They don't care about our relationship with Chu Li. Since we're related, they'll take revenge on him. Yes, we have to be careful, Xiao Shi said. Suru said, should we ask them to retreat? All right. Co. Shi nodded. Suru got up and went out to give the order. In the past, the protectors of the High Duke's public house would have felt embarrassed and looked down upon when he gave such an order. But now they did not have such thoughts. Compared to Chu Li, they were too far behind. Moreover, when it came to the strength of Chu Li's enemy, all of them were well aware of it. Returning to the High Duke's public house to hide for a while was understandable. Chu Li sat on the bed in his bedroom. He held a jade pendant in both of his hands and channeled an endless stream of inner energy into it. The jade pendant became brighter and brighter, as if a bright moon had fallen between his hands. Unfortunately, the jade pendant was getting brighter and brighter, but there was still no movement. It felt like it was going to break through at any time, but it just couldn't. This feeling was extremely stifling, as if there was phlegm stuck in his throat, and he couldn't spit it out no matter what. He had been sitting on the bed for 2 days and 1 night. The courtyard next to him belonged to Lu Yurong. She had already started her isolated cultivation and discovered the wonders of Goddess Attraction Mountain. The spiritual energy was abundant, and the Empyrean fairy power that she cultivated was a divine power passed down from the outland. It was most suitable for her to cultivate on Goddess Attraction Mountain. Even if she could not absorb the spiritual energy from the outland, it was still beneficial to her cultivation. She was advancing by leaps and bounds, traveling 1,000 miles in a single day. She couldn't stop even if she wanted to, so she had already been in seclusion for 3 days. However, Chu Li was stuck at the inheritance jade pendant, unable to obtain the inheritance. Dong Jianxin had already pointed out to him that the process of activating the inheritance jade pendant was also a process of purifying internal energy. Only by opening the inheritance jade pendant could he meet the requirements of cultivating the art of dragon control. Otherwise, even if he obtained the art of dragon control, it would be useless and he would not be able to cultivate it. It was already noon, and his stomach was growling nonstop. Thus, he let go of his hands and put the jade pendant into his bosom. He got up and left the small courtyard, arriving at another courtyard. Outside of Immortal Attraction Mountain, there were no servants. Everyone had to live alone and cook their own meals. Inside the mountain, however, there were servants who specialized in taking care of daily life, cleaning, and preparing meals. He came to a room in the courtyard. The room was clean and tidy. As soon as he sat down, an old servant came in with food. Chu Li nodded and thanked him. Just as he was about to eat, he heard footsteps. A person sat down across the table. It was Zhou Jie. Chu Li nodded and continued eating. Zhou Jie said, I've heard of Martial Uncle Chu's magnificent feat. Chu Li looked up at him. Zhou Jie smiled. You single-handedly killed 100 people. You really didn't embarrass Immortal Attraction Mountain. Master is very happy. Chu Li smiled. I used some small tricks. It's not worth mentioning. How is it not worth mentioning? Zhou Jie smiled. If it were me, I wouldn't have that ability. Martial Uncle Chu is indeed Martial Uncle Chu. He still hated Chu Li, but he admired him. He felt that Chu Li was a real opponent, and he needed to treat him seriously. Respecting such an opponent was equivalent to respecting himself, so he did not need to suppress his emotions and could already treat him calmly. Chu Li smiled and did not say much. Zhou Jie said, but I heard something. Chu Li looked up at him. Tell me about it. Zhou Jie said, I heard from Tang Zhao that the Fu dynasty has already sent their troops. Chu Li frowned. Zhou Jie nodded. Yes, they've sent their troops to the Ji dynasty. How is that possible? Chu Li frowned in confusion. The Fu dynasty rarely sent their troops. They usually stirred up the other 4 countries to kill each other so that they could reap the benefits. They did not need to do anything themselves, and they often manipulated the situation of the war in the dark. Zhou Jie said, Tang Zhao should be right. This time, we might have angered the Fu dynasty. If we don't teach the Ji dynasty a lesson, the Fu dynasty's prestige will be lost, and they will lose their deterrence to the other 4 countries. Sending troops. Chu Li shook his head. Zhou Jie smiled. But we don't have to worry. Even if they fight, it won't be a war. They won't destroy the Ji dynasty. That's not in line with the Fu dynasty's plan. They'll just show the Ji dynasty a little bit of strength, and it'll be a deterrent to the other 3 countries. Chu Li nodded slowly. However, his heart sank. Since they wanted to deter them, they would naturally have to go all out. The Ji dynasty would lose many soldiers, and it would be his fault. Zhou Jie said, Masters Junior Chu, you don't have to feel guilty. Fighting is common. Even without Masters Junior Chu, it's inevitable that there will be a fight every few years. Chu Li forced a smile. Have they already sent their troops? Yes. Zhou Jie nodded. Chu Li pushed the food away, put down his silver chopsticks, and walked out. Zhou Jie hurriedly said, Masters Junior Chu, Master is already in isolated cultivation. Chu Li waved his hand and continued to walk out. He knew that the disciples of Goddess Attraction Mountain were free and could come and go as they pleased. Since Zhou Dunli and Dong Jianxin were in isolated cultivation, he could leave directly. He thought for a while and glided to Lu Yurong's courtyard. Lu Yurong was practicing the Empyrean fairy palm in the courtyard. Her body was like a piece of white jade, and a warm brilliance circulated. When she saw Chu Li, her bright eyes looked over, cold and emotionless. She was still immersed in the Empyrean fairy power. After a while, she stopped. When she came to Chu Li, she had already returned to normal, and her gaze was warm. What's the matter? If it was not an emergency, he would not have disturbed her cultivation. Chapter 1487. The 9 maids were already in her courtyard. They were only 2 days behind. A maid served tea and quietly retreated. Chu Li took a sip of tea and sighed. I've heard news that the Fu dynasty has sent troops to attack the Ji dynasty. I'm guessing that they've already started fighting. I'm going back to check if the news is true. Send troops? Lu Yurong was shocked, her mouth slightly agape. Chu Li nodded. Lu Yurong frowned and said, No way. How could they possibly fight? Chu Li said, Maybe he wants to rebuild his prestige. This time, more than 100 people were crippled by me. It's too embarrassing. Or maybe he already had this intention and was just waiting for an opportunity. Now, the opportunity has finally presented itself. What is the Fu dynasty trying to do? Lu Yurong frowned. I don't think they should send out their troops just to establish their authority. Chu Li shook his head. This is very important to them. It concerns their control over the 4 nations. Lu Yurong sighed and smiled bitterly. I didn't expect such a big thing to happen. What can you do even if you go back? Don't tell me you're going to the border to fight. Chu Li said, I have to do my part. You might not be able to contribute when you return. Lu Yurong shook her head and said, You might be suspected instead. After all, you're now a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain and a member of the Fu dynasty. How are you going to behave? Chu Li frowned. I'm considered a public enemy of the Fu dynasty. Lu Yurong said, I don't think Goddess Attraction Mountain is allowed to intervene in this kind of battle. Chu Li said, Goddess Attraction Mountain acts as they please. Anyway, no one dares to provoke them openly, and we don't have to be afraid of them even if we attack them in secret. Continue cultivating. I'll go back and take a look. No, it's hard for me to calm down here. Chu Li waved his hand and said, I'll be back as soon as I can. Even if I attack, it won't take too long. You'll only be a burden if you follow me. Lu Yurong rolled her eyes at him. He was being too direct. Chu Li sighed. How about this? I'll go back for a while. Wait, Lu Yurong scoffed. In terms of martial arts, I'm no match for you. But if we're talking about information, I think I can still be of some help. Chu Li thought about it and nodded. All right then, let's go back together. Lu Yurong said, Let's return to the Ren public house. All right, Chu Li nodded. He grabbed Lu Yurong's sleeve and disappeared in a flash. The next moment, he appeared in the backyard of the Ren public house. The noon sun shone brightly, and the whole back garden shone brightly. Hundreds of flowers bloomed, and a delicate fragrance assailed one's nostrils. Lu Yurong clapped. Immediately, a maid appeared. "Mississippi," Chuli asked, "where's my big brother? Young master has just returned." The maid was delicate and graceful. She answered respectfully and looked at Chuli curiously. Lu Yurong said, "Invite big brother over." "Yes," the pretty maid replied. Lu Yurong said, "Don't spread the news of my return." "Yes." The pretty maidservant left quietly. The two of them had just sat in the gazebo when the sound of hurried footsteps rang out. Lu Yulo strode over. As soon as he stepped into the back garden, he looked around. When he saw Lu Yurong, he was relieved. He smiled happily and went to the gazebo. "Big brother." Lu Yurong pursed her lips and smiled. Although it had only been a few days, it felt like a long time. Seeing Lu Yulo again felt like a lifetime had passed. Lu Yulo felt the same way too. He said emotionally, "Little sister, you're finally back." "What happened?" Lu Yurong said. "Chuli heard the news that the Fu dynasty has sent troops to attack the Ji dynasty." "Yes." Lu Yushu's expression was solemn. He sighed. "They're going to fight soon. The two sides are already in a stalemate. This time, the Fu dynasty is serious. They've sent 20,000 troops to the border in a day." He closed fist saluted Chu Li. "Chief Chu, thank you." Chu Li closed fist saluted and smiled. "They're really going to fight?" Lu Yulo nodded. "I think there's a high chance of that. They've come up with an outrageous condition to stop the war." "What condition?" Lu Yurong frowned. Lu Yulo scoffed. "They want you to marry the third prince, Tang Yi, then stop the war. Otherwise, they'll destroy the Ji dynasty." "What a joke." Lu Yurong's jade-like face was covered with a layer of frost. The atmosphere in the gazebo suddenly froze. The air became thinner, and the temperature dropped by a large margin. It felt like they had fallen into an ice cellar. Lu Yulo said, "This time, they've gone too far. What about the emperor?" Lu Yurong sneered. "Don't tell me he's agreed." "I don't know." Lu Yulo shook his head. "The emperor is still considering it. He hasn't sent back any news. But since you're at Goddess Attraction Mountain, it's useless for the emperor to agree. He'll probably be stubborn for once." Chu Li said, "It'll be difficult." He had figured out Lung Wufeng's way of doing things. He had a deep-rooted fear of the Fu dynasty. As an enlightened master, he could endure anything for the Lung clan's empire. Lu Yurong shook her head. "I'll ask around." As she spoke, she left the gazebo and took out a flute from her sleeve. She played it softly, and the sound spread far and wide. Soon, a clear chirp was heard from the sky. Then, a white silhouette flashed before everyone's eyes. A snow-white eagle appeared in front of Lu Yurong and perched on her shoulder. Its beak gently touched Lu Yurong's ear. Lu Yurong took out a small bamboo tube and tied it to the white eagle's claw. Then, she gently sent it off. The white eagle flapped its wings and soared into the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Lu Yurong said, "We should receive news in 2 hours." 2 hours later, the white eagle returned. Lu Yurong's face turned cold when she read the news. She passed the note in the bamboo tube to Chu Li. Chu Li glanced at it and passed it to Lu Yulo. Lu Yulo slammed the pillar of the gazebo. "Damn it!" The letter stated that the emperor, Lung Wufeng, had agreed to the Fu dynasty's third prince's request. He was sending someone to Ren Public House to ask them to hand Lu Yurong over so that Lu Yurong could save the Ji dynasty's border army. They could not sacrifice so many Ji dynasty elites for a woman like Lu Yurong. The troops stationed at the border of the Fu dynasty and the Ji dynasty were the most elite troops in the Ji dynasty, but they were no match for the Fu dynasty. If a war broke out, only 1 out of 10 of them would survive. When that time came, they would have to agree to the Fu dynasty's request. It was better to agree now, lest the Ji dynasty's border army died in vain. Lu Yulo said, "Younger sister, you should leave. Don't come back." "Big brother, once I leave, the High Duke's public house won't have it easy." Lu Yurong shook her head. If she did not appear, Lung Wufeng would definitely force the High Duke's public house. The imperial family had many ways to keep the High Duke's public house in check. With Lung Wufeng's despicable ways, the High Duke's public house would definitely suffer heavy losses. Lu Yurong would be guilty. Chu Li's expression was solemn as he remained silent. Lu Yulo said, "Chief Chu, what do you think?" Chu Li shook his head and sighed. Lu Yulo was slightly disappointed. He had high hopes for Chu Li and felt that he was a man who could create miracles. He might have an idea in such a desperate situation. He did not expect Chu Li to shake his head and reply half-heartedly. Lu Yurong said, "If it really doesn't work, I can only marry him. Only you, Chu Li, will suffer." Chu Li smiled. "Are you really willing to do that? So what if I'm not?" Lu Yurong showed a stubborn look and sneered. "But if I really marry him, Tang Yi won't have it easy." Younger sister, Lu Yulo, shook his head. "I can't push you into the fire pit." Chapter 1488. Chu Li shook his head. "Let's wait and see. I'll think of something." "What is it?" Lu Yurong frowned at him. "Don't do anything stupid. Don't go after Tang Yi." The simplest way was to kill Tang Yi so that he wouldn't pester her anymore. Once Tang Yi was dead, he wouldn't mention her anymore. However, everyone knew that Tang Yi cannot be killed. As the son of God, if someone tried to kill him, the Fu dynasty's emperor would appear and stop it in time. He might even take revenge and kill without restraint. There was no chance of survival. Enlightened masters would not kill the blood relatives of enlightened masters. If the emperor took revenge, all enlightened masters would be alone. Chu Li smiled. "I'll send you back first." "I'm not going back." Lu Yurong shook her head. "I'll stay in the public house. If the emperor really wants to deal with the public house, I can help." She was the pillar of the Ren public house. Without her, the public house would only be able to exert 60 to 70% of its power. With her, they could exert 120% of their power. Chu Li said, "If you're here, there's no way to turn things around. Chu Li, don't cause any more trouble. Let's end this matter here." Lu Yurong looked tired. She rubbed the center of her brows and shook her head. "I don't want to drag too many people down because of me. Too many people have suffered." Chu Li smiled. "This is not up to you. You have to fight if you don't want to. I'll go take a look and find someone to think of a solution. It's good for you to stay here. If anything happens, just look for me." Lu Yurong had his jade pendant. It would appear as long as she crushed it. He saw Lu Yurong's determined face. She would not go back with him, so he did not force her. Chu Li suddenly disappeared. Lu Yulo looked at where he left and shook his head in disappointment. "Looks like he can't do anything." Lu Yurong said, "No one can do anything now unless the mountain master of goddess attraction, Mountain, intervenes. Unfortunately, he won't do anything. It goes against goddess attraction Mountain's principle of neutrality. Besides, the mountain master is an isolated cultivation. He can't be disturbed. Chu Li is so powerful. If he really can't do it, he could go to the Fu dynasty and kill them." Lu Yulo said, "If another 100 grandmasters die, I don't believe the Fu dynasty won't be scared." "You can't." Lu Yurong shook her head and said, "Once this starts, the masters from the Fu dynasty will definitely come to the Ji dynasty. How many people in the Ji dynasty's martial arts world will be spared? Both sides will suffer." Lu Yulo's handsome face revealed a ruthless expression. "If that doesn't work, then both sides will suffer. He would never allow his little sister to marry Tang Yi and push her into the fire pit. She would not be able to rest in peace even if she died. Rather than that, he would rather let the entire Ji dynasty be destroyed than sacrifice his little sister. Once Chu Li returned, he would persuade him to bring his younger sister far away. Then he would dismiss all the masters of the public house, leaving only a few scribes. What would the emperor do then? Would he really destroy the public house? I don't think he has the guts. He was extremely dissatisfied with the emperor and felt that the emperor was not worthy of his loyalty. His original thoughts changed drastically. He was originally very enthusiastic about serving the emperor, and so was his youngest sister. They felt that the prosperity of the public house needed the support of the imperial family, so they helped King Jing to become the crown prince. However, he did not expect the royal family to be so heartless. Their painstaking loyalty was rewarded with betrayal and betrayal. If he had known this would happen, he would have stayed away from it. Even if the High Duke's public house declined a little, it would still be better than this. Unfortunately, there was no cure for regret in this world. Nothing could be changed. Chuli suddenly appeared at the Great Light Peak. Then, in a flash, he appeared in Divine Light Basilica. The setting sun dyed Divine Light Basilica the color of roses. Sun Mingwei, dressed in a white tunic, sat quietly behind the desk, flipping through the files. Every time Chuli came, he saw the same situation. She was flipping through the files and handling academic affairs. It was as if she was just a puppet handling academic affairs, without her own life or feelings. He had the most intimate contact with her, understood her heart, and felt sympathy and pity for her. After he suddenly appeared for a while, Sun Mingwei suddenly looked up and saw Chuli, who was motionless. She frowned and said unhappily, "When did you come?" "I just arrived," Chuli replied. Sun Mingwei said, "Is it because of the Fu Dynasty's troops? You've been in the limelight again, but this is the end. You must be very upset, right?" Chuli came to the desk and sighed. "In the end, I still have to rely on you." He actually did not want to meet Sun Mingwei unless she needed his help. He was not prepared to let Sun Mingwei help him. Unfortunately, things did not always go according to one's wishes. He had no choice but to come in the end. "Beg me." Sun Mingwei raised her eyebrows and said, "You're not going to kill Tang Yi, are you?" Chuli slowly said, "I won't kill Tang Yi, but I'll teach him a lesson." "Then why did you come to me?" Sun Mingwei said, "You can handle Tang Yi." Chuli said, "Tang Hao Tian." Sun Mingwei remained silent. Chuli stared at her, knowing that she was in a difficult position. If she joined forces with him to deal with Tang Hao Tian, it would affect the fate of the Holy Church of Light and the Li dynasty. Once Tang Hao Tian recognized her, he would definitely take revenge on the Holy Church of Light and the Li dynasty. He was willing to send troops just for a woman, so he would be even crazier for his son. Sun Mingwei said, "You want to injure Tang Yi so badly that he won't dare to have any improper thoughts, right?" Chuli calmly said, "I want to cripple him. Tang Hao Tian will definitely risk his life." Sun Mingwei frowned. After that, he'll attack the Ji dynasty, the Holy Church of Light, and even the Li dynasty. If the Ji dynasty and the Li dynasty join forces, can they really defeat the Fu dynasty? She had always wanted to overthrow the Fu dynasty's oppression and remove the burden that was weighing down on her. Unfortunately, the Fu dynasty was too powerful, so she did not know when she could achieve this wish. She might not even be able to do it in her lifetime, so she could only pin her hopes on the efforts of the next few generations. If she agreed to help Chuli now, she would immediately face the Fu dynasty's overwhelming revenge, which would bring disaster to the Li dynasty and even the Holy Church of Light. She could not calmly weigh the pros and cons. Chuli said, "The Fu dynasty isn't that powerful anymore. The martial arts masters might not be that powerful, but the Li dynasty and the Ji dynasty are far from being able to fight against them. The Fu dynasty's army is even more elite, and the Ji dynasty's army can't withstand a single blow from them. Otherwise, why would Lung Wufeng be so weak? He's the clearest about the actual situation and the overall situation," Sun Mingwei said. Chuli nodded slowly. Sun Mingwei said, "No matter how powerful you are, you're only one person, and there are only two of us. We might be able to defeat Tang Hao Tian, but we can't defeat the Fu dynasty." Chuli smiled. "In that case, you're rejecting my offer?" "Yes, I can't agree to it," Sun Mingwei said slowly. Chuli did not look disappointed. Instead, he smiled. "In that case, there's nothing I can do. Unless you become an enlightened master immediately," Sun Mingwei said. Chuli fist saluted. "If that's the case, I'll take my leave." Sun Mingwei stared at him. "You won't act on your own, will you? Are you going to die for Lu Yuron?" Chuli waved his hand and suddenly disappeared. Chapter 1489. Sun Mingwei went to the place where Chuli disappeared and remained silent. Her beautiful face showed a complicated expression. Her eyes flickered, sometimes bright, sometimes dark. At this moment, all kinds of emotions were entangled and could not be sorted out. Two thoughts were fighting in her mind. One side decided to help, and the other side decided not to. The one who helped was desperately looking for excuses, while the one who did not help had only one reason. The two thoughts were fighting like an army. It was hard to tell which was better. She suddenly raised her head and looked behind her. Chuli stood silently behind her and smiled. "Are you willing to do this?" "What do you mean?" Sun Mingwe scoffed. Chuli shook his head and smiled. "I know you're not satisfied. This is your best chance." Sun Mingwe frowned and stared at him. She was tempted. Once she became an enlightened master, she could not do as she pleased. She was bound by the heavenly rules and could not do anything to the Fu dynasty. She could only pin her hopes on the next generation, her own successor. Just like his master in the past, his master might have gone through the same mental journey as him. His own efforts were in vain, and in the end, he could only place his hopes on him. That was why he was so strict with himself and made him work hard. He spent a huge amount of effort to make himself the number one person below the grandmasters in preparation to become a stronger, enlightened master in the future. Unfortunately, she had failed to live up to her master's high expectations and was still unable to achieve anything. Now that she was only a year away from becoming an enlightened master, if she could not defeat the Fu dynasty, she would lose her chance and end up like her master. This time, she had a great chance. Although it was risky, there were always advantages and disadvantages in this world. Chuli smiled. "How about it? Do you want to take the risk? What are you going to do?" Sun Mingwe scoffed. Chuli said, "You know." "All right." Sun Mingwe nodded slowly. Chuli smiled. "If that's the case, let's go. If I regret this, we'll never meet again." Sun Mingwe scoffed. Chuli said, "Of course." Sun Mingwe said, "Also, you owe me a big favor. If I need your help in the future, you must do it without hesitation like I do now." Chuli shook his head. "You've been hesitating for a long time." Sun Mingwe sneered and said, "If I really want to hesitate, it won't just be a short while. I might need to think about it for a few days." "All right." Chuli nodded. "I'll owe you a favor then." The two of them quickly reached a tacit understanding. He grabbed Sun Mingwe's sleeve, and the two of them suddenly disappeared. Great Fu Jilan City, the largest restaurant in Jilan City, was completely empty, with only 20 or so people dining on the third floor. At the center of the table was Tang Yi. He was lazily picking up his silver chopsticks and picking at the food. He did not eat for a long time and looked at the table full of delicacies with disgust. Finally, he put down his silver chopsticks and did not eat anything. He picked up a silver cup and drank it in one gulp. He snorted and said, "I don't have an appetite. You guys are guarding at the side. How can I have an appetite? Find some beauties and bring them over." "Your Highness, the Emperor has ordered that there cannot be any strangers." The middle-aged guard, Su Shirshing, shook his head and sighed. "We have to be careful of that Chu fellow. I'm afraid he won't give up now that he's cornered." "Where did all of your courage go?" Tang Yi said in disdain. "Does he have the guts to kill me?" Su Shirshing said, "Even a dog will jump over a wall once cornered. He's a master. He won't tolerate this silently." "Isn't he afraid of death?" Tang Yi sneered. "If he really isn't afraid of death, he would have killed me long ago. But I'm standing right in front of him, and he only dares to slap me twice. Don't worry." When he thought of those two slaps, he felt a faint pain in his cheeks. It was as if Chuli was still standing right in front of him. His lips curled into a cruel smile. He must kill him. Sigh. Su Shirshing shook his head and sighed. He knew that he could not persuade him. He could vaguely guess what Tang Yi was thinking. He wanted to infuriate Chu Li and provoke him into killing him. Then, he could borrow the Emperor's hand to kill Chu Li. It was not as if the Emperor did not have such intentions. Otherwise, he would not have sent troops to the Ji dynasty's border and started a war. All of this was forcing Chu Li to assassinate Tang Yi. Once that happened, the Emperor would have an excuse to kill him. Chu Li was too dangerous to the Fu dynasty now. He had to be eliminated, or else there would be endless trouble in the future. He looked around and finally shook his head. He did not know if Chu Li would dare to come. He sighed. "I'm just afraid that the one coming to assassinate your Royal Highness is not Chu Li, but Lu Yurong." "That's great." Tang Ye's eyes lit up. He laughed. "If she's coming, then don't go back. We can't deal with Chu Li, but can't we deal with Lu Yurong? Then why don't you all go home and stay? Don't worry, Your Royal Highness. If Lu Yurong really dares to come, we'll capture her alive and present her to your Royal Highness. Everyone responded. Tang Yi sat at the table in the middle, while the others occupied the other 4 tables, guarding the 4 corners of the table. They surrounded him tightly, making it difficult for birds to pass through and water to get in. Tang Yi did not have an appetite, but they did. They ate happily. Only when they were full would they have the strength to fight. They had been preparing, tensed up, and turned the pressure into appetite. Chu Li's reputation was growing, giving them a lot of pressure. If he appeared, they would not be able to block a single move. They might even die in one move. This time was different from the last time. Last time, they still had reservations, so they only crippled their martial arts and did not kill them. However, at this point, Chu Li should have no more reservations. If he made a move, he might just kill them. Your Royal Highness, is that Lu Yurong really that beautiful? Someone laughed. You can't forget her. She's unparalleled. Tang Yi glanced at the crowd and scoffed. You mortals can't see her beauty. Everyone chuckled. Although Tang Yi was arrogant, he treated the protectors around him very well. He did not seem to put on airs and spoke rudely and directly, which made the protectors feel close to him. They did not have to guess his thoughts all day long. Unfortunately, she's already married. A protector sighed. Your Royal Highness, do you still like her? Tang Yi said coldly. There's no woman in this world that I can't have. She will definitely become my woman. Or concubine Ping? Su Shishing asked curiously. Tang Yi laughed coldly. What do you think? Is she worthy of being concubine Ping? I'll let that bastard Chu Li take advantage of her. I'll make her regret it. Su Shishing saw the cold glint in Tang Yi's eyes and knew that it had triggered his tyranny. If Lu Yurong really married him, she would not have a good life. She might not have long to live. It was such a waste. He could only think about it, but he did not dare to say it out loud. Tang Yi gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. He laughed coldly. Lu Yurong, Chu Li, I'll make you regret being born. Is that so? Suddenly, there was a clear laughter. Chu Li appeared in front of everyone, standing beside Tang Yi. Everyone was shocked. They immediately froze and did not dare to move. Chapter 1490. Tang Yi could not help but cover his face. He took a step back and stared at him in shock. Chu Li smiled at him and shook his head with a look of disdain. Seems like your Royal Highness is afraid of me. Nonsense. Tang Yi scoffed. He was furious at himself for retreating and covering his face. He hated himself and hated Chu Li even more. He clenched his teeth and glared at Chu Li. Chu Li, how dare you? This isn't the Ji dynasty. Chu Li glanced at the crowd. His gaze was calm and clear without a trace of emotion. Finally, his gaze fell on a young protector. The young guard pressed his left hand on the hilt of his sword and remained motionless. The aura around his body was skyrocketing, and he was ready to strike at any moment. Obviously, he was prepared to perish together with Chun Shi. He pressed forward with an indomitable will to perish together with him. Chu Li looked at him playfully. He shook his head and suddenly punched him. Bang! The young protector flew out and crashed into the vermilion pillar of the restaurant. He was instantly immobilized, and his body sank 3 inches into the pillar. Blood gushed out from the corner of his mouth and his eyes. He was on his last breath. The crowd felt their hearts skip a beat and almost stopped beating. Their heartstrings suddenly tightened again, as if they were going to snap at any time. Chu Li, you're too arrogant. A middle-aged protector shouted and pounced at Chu Li. His legs hadn't even left the ground when he flew out with a pong sound and also stuck to the pillar. Only under the young bodyguard's feet, the 2 of them were stuck to the pillar, one above the other below, unable to move at all, only revealing a struggling and pained expression. Chu Li glanced at the crowd and smiled faintly. Who else is not convinced? I'm not convinced. Su Shishing shouted. This is the Fu dynasty, not the Ji dynasty. It's not a place where you can do whatever you want. Is that so? Chu Li smiled. He turned around and suddenly slapped Tang Yi's face. Slap! A crisp slap was heard. Tang Yi covered his face and glared at him with a hint of fear. He had already gathered his inner energy and was ready to sneak a punch at Chu Li to avenge the slap. The depth of his cultivation was far beyond what others could imagine. Half of his usual arrogance was his true nature, and the other half was an act. He exaggerated his true nature to hide his ambition for the throne. He had always been cultivating in secret, and his cultivation was outstanding. Even if it was not as good as Wei Wuwei's, it was not far off. However, he had never had the chance to reveal it, and only his father could see through it. No one else knew the depth of his cultivation. Unfortunately, he had always prided himself on hiding his strength and being able to disguise himself as a pig to eat a tiger. However, in front of Chu Li, he was no different. No matter how strong his martial arts were, he could not withstand a single blow from Chu Li. He could not avoid this slap. He had already tried his best to dodge this slap, and he had expected that Chu Li would do this. Unfortunately, with his profound inner energy, he was unable to react in time and had already been slapped. Chu Li's movements were extremely fast, but did not seem fast. Chu Li turned to look at the crowd. They were eager to make a move and stared at him. This slap landed on Tang Ye's face, but it was more like a slap to their faces. The subject had to die if their master was humiliated. They wanted nothing more than to kill Chu Li, but they were wary of his powerful martial arts and did not dare to act recklessly. Chu Li shook his head. Protectors of the imperial residence don't even dare to fight. Chu Li, what do you want? Su Shishing said in a low voice. You have to know that if His Royal Highness is injured, you won't be able to escape. Chu Li smiled. You don't have to worry about whether I can escape or not. Think about your Royal Highness. How badly will he be injured? You can take a guess. Will I chop off one of his arms or castrate him? Otherwise, he will be thinking about women all day long and snatching other people's women when he sees them. Chu Li, don't you dare. Tang Yi sneered. Chu Li glanced at him and smiled. Why wouldn't I dare? If you hurt me, my father will definitely kill you. Tang Yi said in disdain. Do you want to die with me? Why can't I die with you? Chu Li shook his head. Since you don't want to let me live, let's all die together. That way, you won't continue to harm other women in this world. Do you dare? Tang Yi shook his head and pouted. Chu Li said, It's fine if I die, but for you, it's a pity. You won't be able to fight for the throne anymore. What do you mean? Tang Yi's expression changed. Chu Li said, As a prince, who would believe that you don't want to fight for the throne? Your lustful nature can't hide your ambition. You think you're smart and can fool the world. Tang Yi's face darkened. He looked at the people around him. They all looked away. Tang Yi knew that Chu Li was right. He was the only one who thought he was smart, but he was fooled by everyone. His anger was like a huge flame that could swallow him at any time. He gritted his teeth. Chu Li, do you dare to make a move? Slap. Another slap was heard. Tang Yi stood where he was. A red mark appeared on the left side of his face. The red mark on the right side had turned purple. He glared at Chu Li, but did not say anything else. He knew that he would be slapped again if he did. Chu Li smiled. Your Royal Highness, do you regret being born into this world? No. Tang Yi laughed coldly. I only regret that I didn't kill Lu Yuro. Chu Li frowned at him and smiled. It seems like your Royal Highness wants to die. Don't worry, I won't kill you. I'll just cripple you. He flicked his finger. Bang! Su Shishing suddenly stood in front of Tang Yi and blocked the finger energy with his palm. He instantly fell to the ground like a pile of mud. Chu Li smiled and flicked his finger again. You're loyal. I'll spare your life. Huh. The others rushed over. Chu Li's figure disappeared from the spot and appeared in front of Tang Yi in the next moment. He gently poked his chest. A cold light flashed from his waist, and a cold light pierced the center of his legs. Ah! Tang Yi screamed and fell to the ground. His martial arts had been crippled, and he had become a eunuch. How dare you? A loud bang suddenly sounded. The protectors who were rushing over fell to the ground like dumplings in a pot. This loud shout shook the heavens and the earth. It directly shook the mind and made them lose control of their inner energy. Chu Li disappeared in a flash. Die! A yellow shadow flashed in front of everyone. Chu Li disappeared almost at the same time. Your Majesty! The yellow shadow disappeared before anyone could shout. Chu Li appeared above the 10 absolute origin lock valley in the next moment. Sun Mingwei was standing at the peak. When she saw him appear, she immediately extended her left hand. Chu Li held her hand, and the two of them jumped down into the valley. The yellow shadow suddenly flashed and appeared in the void. It punched the two of them. Bang! Chu Li met it with his palm. There was an explosion in the void. Chu Li and Sun Mingwei's speed of descent suddenly increased. The yellow shadow flashed again and appeared below Chu Li and Sun Mingwei in the next moment. It then punched upwards. Bang! In the explosion, Chu Li and Sun Mingwei's body suddenly slowed down and almost floated up. Chu Li frowned and swung his palm again. Bang! The yellow shadow met the palm and could not help but descend. Chapter 1491. Chu Li frowned and looked at Sun Mingwei. Sun Mingwei shook her head. Her face was covered by a white veil, revealing only her bright eyes that were crystal clear. She did not want to make a move unless it was a critical moment. Once she made a move, her identity would be exposed. She could not hide the divine light fist from Tang Haoyan. He would definitely seek revenge from the Holy Church of Light. Chu Li shook his head. Even if she did not make a move, she could not hide it from Tang Haoyan. Tang Haoyan must have known that they worked together to deal with Monk Luan Ming and Chun Jinji. Tang Haoyan guessed that it was Sun Mingwei. Even if he did not know, he would know after asking around. Grandmasters being able to fight against enlightened masters was rare and easy to find out. Sun Mingwei blinked her bright eyes and shook her head again. She would not make a move unless it was a critical moment. Chu Li smiled helplessly and did not try to persuade her. The two of them suddenly fell at an incredible speed. Suddenly, a yellow figure flashed below them. Chu Li had been waiting for the yellow figure. As soon as he saw it, he attacked with Heavenly King Palm. Heavenly King Palm was fierce and overbearing. It was as fast as thunder. Bang! With an explosion, the yellow figure suddenly fell 2 feet and stopped in the void as if it was stepping on nothing. Chu Li and Sun Mingwei could not do this. This was a skill unique to enlightened masters. They could borrow strength from the void, so it was endless and impossible to defend against. The yellow silhouette revealed its true form. It was a middle-aged man with thick eyebrows and big eyes. He was not handsome, but he looked tough. He exuded a valiant aura, but it was less gentle than Chu Li's valiant aura and more rugged. It was as if he was a man of steel who had walked out of a sandstorm. At first glance, one could tell that he was rugged and heroic, with an extraordinary bearing. Chu Li knew that the person in front of him was the most powerful person in the world, the Fu Dynasty's emperor, Tang Haoyan. Tang Haoyan's eyes were bright like torches. He stared at Chu Li and then at Sun Mingwei. He frowned. "Are you Lu Yurong?" Sun Mingwei's eyes flashed, but she did not say anything. Tang Haoyan obviously did not know the power of Chu Li and Sun Mingwei together. He mistook her for Lu Yurong, which was exactly what Sun Mingwei wanted. She scoffed but did not say anything. Chu Li and Sun Mingwei kept falling. Tang Haoyan followed, but his speed was as slow as a feather. Chu Li scoffed. "Your Majesty wants to avenge the third prince." "That's right." Tang Haoyan's expression darkened. "How dare you hurt my son?" Chu Li sneered. "Your Majesty is indulging him so much because you want to kill him, right? You're just borrowing my hand." "Nonsense." Tang Haoyan grunted coldly. "You must be dreaming." Chu Li said, "He borrowed my hands to kill him, and then he killed me. Everything will go smoothly and flawlessly." Could it be because of his ambition? Which prince in the world doesn't have ambition? There's nothing to worry about. No, there must be some inside story. Could it be that it involves the secrets of the palace? "I'll kill you today," Tang Haoyan said grimly. His gaze fell on Sun Mingwei, and he said, "As for you, Miss Lu, follow me back. Marrying my son won't be considered a disgrace to you. In the future, help the High Duke's public house a little more, and the High Duke's public house won't be constrained by the great Ji dynasty." Sun Mingwei snorted softly and did not say anything, revealing a look of disdain. Chu Li glanced at her and felt helpless about her actions. Chu Li said, "Your Majesty might not be able to kill me today. Then wait and see." I never talk nonsense. Tang Haoyan grunted and pounced on him again. Chu Li countered with a punch. Bam! Tang Haoyan countered with a palm strike. The muffled sound was earth-shattering, but it did not affect the two. They continued to fight head-on. Their fists and palms collided, and the muffled sound was incessant, shaking the entire ravine. The three of them did not keep falling, but floated up and down. Sometimes they floated up, and sometimes they fell. Chu Li and Sun Mingwei did not have Tang Haoyan's ability to turn the void into the ground, but they could use the changes in their inner energy to move their bodies up and down. Tang Haoyan's long-lost competitiveness was stimulated. He stubbornly believed that he could not defeat Chu Li. His palms were more powerful than the last. His eyes were shining, and his face was glowing. He fought to his heart's content. He had not let go of himself like this for a long time. There were very few people in the world who could let him do as he pleased. These people usually did not want to fight with him, so he could not put his unparalleled martial arts to use. It was like the dragon-slaying technique. He could not muster up the energy to continue cultivating it. Such a rare opportunity made him exuberant and excited. Every palm strike was delightful, and the wind from his palm overflowed in all directions, shaking the void as if it was about to shatter the void. The power of his palm strike was beyond his imagination. Chu Li gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. He did not expect Tang Haoyan to be so powerful. He was many times more powerful than Luan Ming, Chun Jinji, and the others. Enlightened masters were indeed different. Sun Mingwei frowned as she watched the two of them fight, comparing their strengths. Tang Haoyan's cultivation level was indeed high and shocking, and he was even more powerful than Chu Li. However, Chu Li's techniques were experienced, and he was barely able to turn the tables. Even so, he was still suppressed by Tang Haoyan and was on the verge of collapsing. She secretly exclaimed that Chu Li was indeed a gifted genius. Logically speaking, he was young, so his techniques should be inferior to Tang Haoyan's. However, it was the opposite. His techniques were more experienced and skilled than Tang Haoyan's. Although she did not want to attack, if she did not attack at this point, she was afraid that the Supreme Titanium Supreme Scripture's inner energy would be completely exhausted, and she would not be able to defeat Tang Haoyan. She could only attack and punch. Bam! Tang Haoyan caught the punch effortlessly and dropped to the ground. He did not expect Sun Mingyue's punch to be so powerful. It was not inferior to Chu Li's, and Chu Li also punched at the same time. Chu Li and Sun Mingwei followed closely behind and punched at the same time. Both of them used the Divine Light Fist, and after combining, the power was like 4 punches superimposed. Tang Haoyan fell into a disadvantageous position and was suppressed by the two of them. He kept falling and fell into the ravine in one breath. He suddenly fell into the ravine, and his vitality dissipated. Tang Haoyan was shocked and immediately activated his secret skill to draw in spiritual energy from the outland. Then, he avoided the pool and fell to the side. Chu Li and Sun Mingwei followed closely behind him. Tang Haoyan floated toward the forest and sneered. "This will be your burial ground." Other than enlightened masters, no one in the world could mobilize spiritual energy from the outland. At this time, the two of them were probably at the end of their rope and would soon run out of inner energy. They were at his mercy. Chu Li and Sun Mingwei suddenly sped up and simultaneously used the Divine Light Fist. Tang Haoyan suddenly dodged twice, sidestepped the 2 punches, and rushed in front of the two of them. Bang! He took Chu Li's punch head-on and slashed his right palm at Sun Mingwei. Sun Mingwei met it with a punch and suddenly flew backward. Chu Li hurriedly used his body movement technique to fly backward. He did not have time to give Tang Haoyan another punch. Instead, he channeled his inner energy to help channel the strange palm force in her body. Sun Mingwei spat out a mouthful of blood and leaned on him weakly, completely relying on him to support her. Chu Li secretly sighed at Tang Haoyan's ruthlessness. He had taken the initiative to use a secret skill to injure her, and his attack was ruthless and accurate. The strange force in Sun Mingyue's body was strange and unpredictable. It seemed illusory, but it was real. It was hard to grasp, and his rich inner energy could not expel it. He frowned and looked at Tang Hao Ian, who was not far away. Chapter 1492. Sun Mingwei pushed him lightly and whispered, "Take care of him first." Chu Li frowned at her. Sun Mingwei shook her head. "I'm fine," Chu Li said. "Ignore him first. We'll talk after you're healed." Sun Mingwei frowned and scoffed. "If we don't take care of him now, we'll all be killed by him." Chu Li nodded slowly. Their auras were almost gone. He did not expect Tang Hao Ian to be so powerful. He was far more powerful than Luan Ming, Chun Jinji, and the others. If it was Luan Ming and Chun Jinji, they would have been severely injured. No wonder the Fu dynasty could suppress the other 4 countries. It was not only because of the country's power, but also because of the enlightened master. Other than Tang Hao Ian, there was also the more powerful mountain master of Goddess Attraction Mountain, his master Zhou Dunli. The other 4 countries could only surrender. When he thought of this, he wanted to see if he could kill Tang Hao Ian. He gently put Sun Mingwei down and let her sit cross-legged on the grass. Then, he fluttered to Tang Hao Ian. Tang Hao Ian suddenly opened his eyes. They were frightening as he pushed his palms forward. Chu Li countered with his palms. Bang! Chu Li took 2 steps back. The strange aura entered his body like a snake. He felt weak, as if all his inner energy was devoured by this strange aura. His meridians were empty, and he could not produce any strength. The power of this strange palm energy was shocking. It must be some kind of secret skill. Chu Li took 2 steps back again. He took a deep breath and carefully felt the palm energy. He did not care that it was wreaking havoc in his body and activated the secret skill. His white robe fluttered as he slowly inflated like a balloon. Tang Hao Ian frowned as he looked at him and desperately activated his inner energy. The white robe suddenly stuck to his body. It was as if he had shrunk and became shorter and weaker. Chu Li exhaled a mouthful of murky air and slowly extended his palm to activate the sacrifice technique. He gathered all his cultivation in this palm. It was the heavenly king palm. Suddenly, a ray of light descended from the sky and gathered in Chu Li's palm. It was the spiritual energy from beyond the heavens. It condensed into a vague palm print and disappeared. The next moment, it appeared on Tang Hao Ian's chest. Tang Hao Ian wanted to dodge, but it was in vain. He realized that his body's reaction was not fast enough, and he took the hit. Bang! He was like a stone that was thrown by a catapult. He drew an arc in the air and crashed heavily into a big tree. He spat out a mouthful of blood. All right. Tang Hao Ian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and sneered at Chu Li. He leaped up the tree and swooped down on Sun Mingwei like an eagle. Chu Li furrowed his brows. Tang Hao Ian's body was so strong, but he was still standing. In desperation, he desperately activated the sacrifice formula. His body was already empty, so he squeezed out the last bit of his inner force and stood in front of Sun Mingwei. Bang! He was sent flying. Good lad, you're really infatuated. I'll kill you next time. Tang Hao Ian sneered. Without stopping, he leaped up and disappeared into the sky in the blink of an eye. Chu Li lay limply in front of Sun Mingwei, blood gushing out from the corner of his mouth. He was powerless to move. Tang Hao Ian's strange palm force was wreaking havoc in his body, destroying his internal organs. His body was rapidly weakening. Sun Mingyue's expression under the white veil was complicated. She frowned and helped him up. She sighed. If it were not for Chu Li blocking in front of him, he would have lost his life if he took the hit. Chu Li shook his head. I miscalculated. I didn't expect Tang Hao Ian to be so powerful. Sun Mingwei said, if you can't kill him, you'll kill him next time. This time, he knows how powerful you are, so he won't dare to mess around. Chu Li smiled weakly. I don't have to worry about the Holy Church of Light anymore, right? Worry about yourself first. Sun Mingwei rolled her eyes at him. Her rich breath rushed into Chu Li's body. She realized that something was wrong. Chu Li's internal organs were already destroyed. Only a spirit pill, like the spirit blessing pill, could save him. However, in this 10 ultimate vitality ceiling valley, no spirit pill would work. She gritted her teeth and stood up. She helped Chuli up and walked toward the cave. Although she was heavily injured, she could still use her light body technique. She helped him push away the vines and entered the cave. After entering the cave, she felt a sense of familiarity and warmth. She was no longer shy and awkward. She quickly took off their clothes and hugged Chuli as they began to cultivate the supreme diamond scripture. After the supreme diamond scripture was activated, the Brahma wheel continuously surged into the Outland's spiritual energy. Through their undersea wheel, it turned into a rich breath that circulated in their bodies and expelled the feeling of weakness. Their bodies that were damaged by the strange palm energy were quickly recovering. However, the strange palm energy was like an illusory fog that would disperse as soon as it approached. They could not get rid of it no matter how hard they tried. It lingered in their bodies. Tang Hao Ian flew up and used his secret skill to rush out of the 10 ultimate vitality ceiling formation. He rushed to the peak in one breath. Ugh! He spat out a mouthful of blood. He could no longer suppress his weakness and pain. First, he was injured. Then, he used 3 secret skills. His body could not take it anymore. Fortunately, he was out of the formation. The spiritual energy from heaven and earth surged to repair his body. Otherwise, his life would be in danger. It was too dangerous this time. Chuli! He suddenly turned his head to look behind him. His expression changed. Zhou Dunley was dressed in a yellow tunic. He looked at him quietly. His kind face was solemn. Brother Zhou, Tang Hao Ian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and fist saluted. We haven't seen each other for a long time. I missed you. Zhou Dunley said coldly. Did you think of me when you killed my disciple? Tang Hao Ian shook his head helplessly. Brother Zhou, you should know that Chuli isn't a disciple of the Food Dynasty. Even if he entered Goddess Attraction Mountain, his heart is still in the Ji Dynasty. It's best to get rid of him, lest we raise a tiger in our bosom. I don't care about the Food Dynasty or the Ji Dynasty. I only know that he's my disciple. Zhou Dunley scoffed. The cause was that useless third son of yours. He coveted my disciple's woman. That was just a prelude, Tang Haotian said. Zhou Dunley said, if there's a next time, don't blame me for turning against you. He's already crippled my son. Tang Haotian shook his head and smiled bitterly. But he's unharmed. Zhou Dunley scoffed. I hope he's fine. If anything happens to him, we'll have a good fight. Tang Haotian said, he won't die. Brother Zhou, you've taken in a good disciple. He was extremely wary of Chuli. If he could not get rid of him, there would be another Zhou Dunley in the future. If that happened, the Ji Dynasty would become a big problem for the Food Dynasty. He had to think of a way to get rid of Chuli. Zhou Dunley said coldly, you better listen to me. If there's a next time, I won't be so nice. He slowly took 2 steps forward and got closer to Tang Haotian. As long as he doesn't provoke me, I won't kill him. Tang Haotian sighed and swore helplessly. He knew that he could not hide his weakness from Zhou Dunley. All right, I'll remember this. Zhou Dunley snorted coldly and didn't move forward. An enlightened master's promise was valid. Otherwise, there would be trouble. Tang Haotian secretly sighed in relief. He gave a fist salute and said, I'll take my leave then. Go. Zhou Dunley scoffed. Tang Haotian did not stay any longer. He disappeared from a spot in a flash. Zhou Dunley turned his head to look at the ravine. This new disciple of his really had a lot of women. He did not know what would happen if he was distracted like this. He shook his head and suddenly disappeared. Chuli suddenly opened his eyes. With a wave of his hand, a jade pendant in his shirt flew into his hand. He continued to make hand signs with both hands. The jade pendant was sandwiched between his hands. As a mellow aura flowed into it, it became brighter and brighter. The entire cave was as bright as day. In the end, it was as if a sun had fallen into the cave, shining brightly. A dragon's roar suddenly echoed in his mind. A huge dragon appeared in front of him, traversing through the clouds. Chapter 1493. Amidst the dragon's roar, A dazzling golden dragon soared through the clouds, as if it was real. Every scale on the dragon's body flickered with a different golden light. The golden light seemed to have a life of its own, and a vast majesty pressed down on him, as if it wanted him to kneel down in submission. An endless power pressed down on him. The Supreme King Kong suddenly raised his head and pointed at the dragon. A ray of light as bright as the morning sun shot towards the golden dragon. Boom! It was a loud noise. He felt dizzy, and everything became unreal. Everything was an illusion. The rich breath was still flowing. He slowly recovered and saw Sun Mingyue's beautiful face looking at him worriedly. He smiled. The heart technique kept circulating in his mind. He could not forget it. It was the dragon taming technique. The mental cultivation method of the art of dragon control was abnormally complicated. Each layer had a different mental cultivation method, and each layer's mental cultivation method was completely different from the previous layer. It was like a different mental cultivation method, and there was no inheritance. It was not easy to cultivate the dragon taming technique. More importantly, the key to the dragon taming technique was not himself, but the dragon. It needed the assistance of the dragon energy. Without the dragon energy, it was difficult to break through to the next level. No wonder there was a spirit snake in a valley. The spirit snake was growing stronger and stronger. It was going to turn into a dragon. It was senior brother Dong Jianxin's spirit snake. In the future, it would become a real dragon with him and fly to the outland. Chuli knew how to cultivate the dragon taming technique. He needed to find a snake and start cultivating from the spirit snake technique. He needed to turn an ordinary giant snake into a spirit snake and use the spirit snake to cultivate the dragon taming technique. The inner energy of the dragon taming technique was enough to let the spirit snake evolve a level and produce a trace of dragon energy. Through the feedback of this dragon energy, he could advance another level. Then, this cycle would continue until the 9th level, where he could truly turn into a dragon and travel to the outland. Chuli frowned and pondered. The process of turning a snake into a dragon would definitely take a very long time. The cultivation of the art of dragon control was very ordinary. If he wanted to cultivate the art of dragon control and the other 3 mental cultivation methods within 2 years, or even 1 year, becoming a heavenly god would be a dream. Sun Mingyue saw him frowning and asked softly, "What are you thinking about?" She noticed that something was amiss behind her and shone brightly. Then, Chuli was distracted. Although he was still channeling the supreme titanium scripture, his spirit seemed to have drifted far away and was no longer in front of him. She was very curious about what Chuli was doing. He could still be absent-minded when he was cultivating like this. Could it be that she could not attract his attention? Chuli slowly woke up. He smiled and shook his head. His intuition was very accurate. If he were to break through the inheritance of the art of dragon control while cultivating the supreme Vajra Sutra, who knew how long it would take for him to do so? Although it was a shortcut, it was beneficial to him. His spirit was strong, and the amount of time he could maintain his cultivation was far beyond that of ordinary people. This was a reason why he improved so quickly and surpassed ordinary people. The earlier he broke through the inheritance of the art of dragon control, the earlier he could not only make up for what he lacked previously, but also obtain more. Sun Mingyue gently let go of his hand, and the two separated. Chuli glanced at her white, jade-like body and turned around to avoid her embarrassment. Sun Mingyue quickly put on her gown to cover her stunning body. Chuli also put on his white robe. The two came out of the cave. Their injuries had healed, but the strange force was still there. However, the speed at which it destroyed their bodies was similar to the recovery speed of their yin and yang force, so it was not a concern. However, they still had to get rid of it. Otherwise, it would be their biggest weakness when they fought others in the future. The two came to the side of the pool. Sun Mingyue looked at the crystal-clear pool and shook her head. "Why don't I see that poisonous dragon?" Chuli said, "It's very smart. It probably sensed danger and didn't come out." Sun Mingyue looked at Chuli. "What are you doing?" Chuli said, "I'm about to cultivate the art of dragon control. It seems like you really want to define nature and become a god." Sun Mingwe sighed softly and shook her head slowly. I'm not as good as you. She did not have the courage to take this path, but it was the best path. As long as she defied nature and became a god, she would not be bound by the heavenly rules. She would be able to do whatever she wanted, and the Holy Church of Light would become the world's #1 religion. The Li dynasty would also be free from the Fu dynasty suppression. She hesitated for a while and sighed without saying a word. Chu Li knew what she was thinking and smiled. The art of dragon control can't be taught to outsiders. I've already sworn an oath. However, what's the difference between me becoming an enlightened master and you becoming one? This time, you owe me a huge favor. I'll try my best to help you. Thank you. Sun Mingwe felt a warmth in her heart and smiled faintly. Chu Li said, unfortunately, the art of dragon control isn't easy to cultivate. Let's not talk about the art of dragon control for now. Let's talk about Tang Haoyan. Sun Mingwe frowned again and shook her head. He already knows that I'm from the Holy Church of Light. He'll definitely seek revenge. Chu Li smiled. That might not be the case. Senior Song is also here. Master can't defeat him, Sun Mingwe said. Chu Li said, there's also the Li dynasty's emperor. I'll persuade Master not to join forces with him. Can you persuade him? Sun Mingwe frowned. Chu Li said slowly, I'll try my best. If it really did not work, he could just say that Sun Mingwe was also his wife. He could vaguely tell that Goddess Attraction Mountain's way of doing things. They only cared about relationships and not reason. As long as he said that Sun Mingwe was his wife, even if Zhou Dunli did not help, he would not go against the Holy Church of Light. Sun Mingwe nodded lightly. Chu Li said, the palm technique he used is strange. What technique is it? If I'm not mistaken, it should be the soul-tracking palm, Sun Mingwe said. I heard that the cultivation method is strange. It was cultivated in a cemetery. It has the ability to track one's soul. Those who are hit by it will not be spared. Soul-tracking palm. Chu Li muttered and shook his head. He had never heard of this palm technique. Sun Mingwe said, it needs to be collected from the sun's fire of extreme yang and the extreme yang and extreme yang heart technique to eliminate it. Extreme yang heart technique. Chu Li frowned. Let's do it this way. Both of us will cultivate it again at noon. Sun Mingwe hesitated for a while and slowly nodded. This was the best way to eliminate the soul-tracking palm. Due to her physique, even if she cultivated the extreme yang and extreme yang heart technique, its power was barely enough. It might not be able to eliminate the soul-tracking palm's energy. Suddenly, a black shadow flashed. The evil nether dragon emerged from the water and revealed its ugly head. It growled at Chu Li. Sun Mingwe's body tensed up as she guarded against its sudden attack. However, she saw that it had no intention of attacking. Instead, it seemed like it was greeting Chu Li. Chu Li waved his hand. The evil nether dragon slowly slid out of the pool. It lay on the grass on the shore and lazily basked in the sun. Sun Mingwe turned to look at Chu Li. Is this how you turn hostility into friendship? Chu Li nodded. It saved me last time, and I saved it too. How interesting. Sun Mingwe shook her head and laughed. It seems that beasts are much stronger than dragons. Chu Li said, spirit beasts are indeed simpler and more reliable than humans. Spirit beasts' intelligence was not inferior to humans, but their hearts were more simple and pure. They could only differentiate between friends and enemies. They were cruel to their enemies, but not malicious to their friends. It was much easier to get along with them than humans. As he spoke, he channeled the first level of the dragon taming technique and transformed the extreme yang and extreme yang inner energy into a mellow force. Then he gently patted the evil nether dragon's body. The evil nether dragon was not on guard against him and allowed him to pat its thigh. Chapter 1494. Seeing this, Sun Mingwe pursed her lips and smiled. Chu Li said, this is the wonder of the dragon taming technique. Sun Mingwe nodded. I heard that the dragon taming technique can transform into a dragon. Is that true? It's true. Chu Li nodded. I saw a real dragon with my own eyes. It's not an ordinary creature. It's different from this dragon, isn't it? Sun Mingwe pointed at the evil nether dragon and smiled. Chu Li shook his head. Compared to it, it's not a dragon. But don't worry, I'll transform it into a dragon. You're going to cultivate here? Sun Mingwe asked. Chu Li nodded. When he first cultivated the spirit snake technique, he had the idea of letting the evil nether dragon help him cultivate. This was a win-win situation. The evil nether dragon could use the dragon taming technique to transform into a real dragon, and he could cultivate the dragon taming technique to become an enlightened master. Sun Mingwe said, "There's nothing to eat or drink here. Do you only eat yin-yang fruits?" "That's not necessarily bad." Chu Li said, "You've enjoyed the wonders of yin-yang fruits." "That's true." Sun Mingwe nodded. "It can change one's physique." After consuming yin-yang fruits for more than a month, her physique had changed greatly. Her aptitude was twice as good as before. Previously, she needed a year to cultivate the heart technique, but now she only needed half a year. Her cultivation level had once again entered a period of rapid improvement, and this period would last for a long time. She hated that time passed too quickly. If it was 2 more years, with her cultivation level, even if she could not defeat the Fu dynasty's enlightened masters after becoming an enlightened master, she would not be too far behind. Unfortunately, things did not always go according to one's wishes. She was pressed for time. "I'll stay here and cultivate. I won't go out until I cultivate the dragon taming technique." Chu Li said, "If you need anything, just come to me. If Tang Haoyin really wants to cause trouble for the Holy Church of Light, I'll help." Sun Mingwe nodded. When she thought about how the Holy Church of Light might be in trouble with Tang Haoyin, she could not stay any longer. She stayed there until noon, when Chu Li and she cultivated the supreme titanium scripture again. This time, the spiritual energy absorbed by the Brahma wheel was exceptionally pure and strong. He did not transform it into a rich aura. Instead, he channeled it according to a heart technique taught by Sun Mingwe. Soon, the strange aura was eliminated. He left with Sun Mingwe. Sun Mingwe returned to the Holy Church of Light, but he was not in a hurry to return. Instead, he returned to the 10 absolute vitality sealing formation and continued to cultivate the dragon taming technique. Time passed like water, and in the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Chu Li had mastered the first stage of the dragon taming technique. The sky beyond heaven's spiritual chi in the cave was exceptionally pure and rich, even better than the goddess attraction mountain. His cultivation speed was extremely fast, and with the evil dark dragon outside, he could transfer the accumulated dragon control art inner energy to the evil dark dragon at any time. The evil dark dragon felt comfortable and powerful, and it knew that Chu Li was helping it. It stayed on the grass next to the pool all day, not even going back at night, so that Chu Li could find it at any time. Once 3 days had passed, he could feel that he had grown stronger. A sliver of dragon energy appeared in his body. After absorbing the dragon energy, Chu Li broke through the first level of his heart technique and reached the second level of the dragon taming technique. Everything seemed to be as easy as flipping one's hand. After reaching the second level, he was not in a hurry to cultivate again. He patted the evil dark dragon and fluttered out of the 10 Despair Valley, returning to King An's imperial residence first. As the sun set, its afterglow dyed the entire imperial residence of King An red. In the backyard, the lanterns were lit and a delicate fragrance floated in the air. Chu Li suddenly appeared and found Seo Shi and Seo Qi in snow-white gowns playing chess in the gazebo. Beside them, Suru was playing the guzheng. The sound of the guzheng was quiet and distant, and it was a peaceful scene. As soon as Chu Li appeared, Seo Qi sensed him. She looked up and smiled faintly. Chu Li smiled and walked over. Seo Shi looked up and glared at him. "You still know to come back." Chu Li smiled. "What happened?" Seo Qi looked at him from head to toe. Her expression did not change, but her eyes were filled with concern. She asked softly, "Are you okay?" Chu Li shook his head and smiled. "What's wrong with me?" "You injured Tang Yi and lured Tang Haoyin out, right?" Seo Qi asked. Chu Li nodded. "It's not easy to escape unscathed from Tang Haoyin." Seo Qi shook her head. "I heard that among the enlightened masters, His ability is only inferior to Goddess Attraction Mountain's Zhou Dunley. He's quite powerful. Chu Li smiled bitterly and nodded slowly. He had indeed experienced Tang Haoyan's power. If it was not for his good luck, he might not have survived. The Supreme Diamond Scripture was not invincible, even if the two of them worked together. After all, they were not enlightened masters. Co Chi said, "You were too reckless this time. How could you do that?" When she heard the news, her heart palpitated. She wanted nothing more than to rush to his side and help him. There had been no news of him for the past 3 days. Fortunately, her instincts told her that he was still alive and was fine. Otherwise, she would have been worried sick. Co sure scoffed. "Looks like you're willing to do anything for Lu Yurong. You've turned the act into reality, haven't you?" Chu Li said impatiently, "If I didn't help, the Ji dynasty's border army would have been annihilated by the Fu dynasty. That's still better than you trying to be brave." Co sure scoffed. "What's the point of courting death? Do you think you can make the Fu dynasty retreat?" "It's still better than doing nothing," Chu Li said. Co Chi shook her head. "I agree with second eldest sister. You shouldn't have helped this time." Chu Li smiled. "Don't worry, I'm lucky." You're lucky this time. Are you going to be lucky every time?" Co sure sneered. "What if you're unlucky one time? What do you expect Shao Qi to do?" Co Chi nodded. Chu Li nodded helplessly. As they spoke, light footsteps could be heard. Lu Su approached them and handed them a small note. "My lady, there's news." Co sure glanced at it and looked at Chu Li in surprise. Chu Li smiled. "What's the good news?" "The Fu dynasty has retreated." Co sure scoffed and looked at him curiously. "Did you really kill Tang Haoyan?" Co Chi said, "Impossible. An enlightened master can't be killed." Chu Li nodded. "I couldn't kill him and was even heavily injured by him. Then why did he suddenly retreat?" Co sure asked curiously. "He wouldn't have retreated if he wasn't at a disadvantage. This concerns the Fu dynasty's dignity. Don't forget that you turned his son into..." She pursed her seductive red lips and chuckled. Co Chi took the note and looked at it. She looked at Chu Li curiously. Chu Li frowned and pondered. In the end, he shook his head and sighed. "Looks like my new master has taken action." This was the only reason he could think of. Even if he and son Mingyue joined forces, they would not be able to restrain Tang Haoyan. Even if Tang Haoyan was forcefully holding on, it would only be a draw. Tang Haoyan would not be afraid of him and Sun Mingyue. Retreating when his son was crippled was an extremely helpless move. It was obvious that he was greatly suppressed and had no choice but to do so. He thought of the only person in the world who could suppress Tang Haoyan, Zhou Dunley. You didn't worship him for nothing. Co sure smiled. Chapter 1495. After bidding farewell to the two ladies, he suddenly appeared in the back garden of the Rin public house. The sound of a guzheng could be heard from the garden. The sound was clear and cheerful. It was obvious that he was in a good mood. Lu Yurong was dressed in white and was playing the guzheng with her head lowered. Her hair was black and shiny, making her skin as fair as jade. Chu Li coughed softly, and the sound stopped. Lu Yurong turned her head and smiled when she saw him. She gestured for him to sit down and talk. Chu Li smiled and sat down. "Did you hear the news?" Lu Yurong's information network was not inferior to Co Shure's. It was even better. The public house had a strong foundation and many spies. Lu Yurong also had spies from the Secret Guardians Hall. She was very resourceful. Even if she resigned as the commander of the Secret Guardians Hall, she still had confidence. "Thank you very much." Lu Yurong stood up and bowed deeply. Chu Li waved his hand, and a gentle inner energy held her up, not letting her bow. He waved his hand and smiled. "It's what I should do. There's no need to thank me. I didn't expect it to be this serious." Lu Yurong sighed. She heard that Tang Yi was crippled and his descendants could not be continued. He would become a cripple in the future. He had no children to begin with, so his bloodline was cut off. This made her feel great, but she was also worried about Chu Li's safety. This was Tang Haoyan's reverse scale. He must kill Chu Li at all costs. Killing Chu Li was not against the heavenly rules. She was worried about Chu Li's safety. When she heard that the Fu dynasty had retreated, she knew that Chu Li should be fine. Tang Haoyan must have suffered, or else he would not have retreated. Humility and leniency were not the Fu dynasty's tradition. If Chu Li was killed, the Fu dynasty's border army would invade the Ji dynasty. This would hurt the Ji dynasty and hurt their vitality. This would serve as a warning to future generations. It was a small matter of Tang Yi liking her and wanting to force her to marry him. In the end, it became so serious that the two countries were about to go to war. She had become a femme fatale. Even if she was smart, she never expected it. Chu Li smiled. I didn't expect it to be so serious, or I wouldn't have agreed. Lu Yurong rolled her eyes. Chu Li said, we should go back. I won't go back. Lu Yurong hesitated. Chu Li looked at her in surprise. Lu Yurong sighed. The matter has been resolved. If I go back now, Xiao Qi won't be happy. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. If you don't go back, things will become more troublesome. You should go there first. Goddess Attraction Mountain is a holy place for cultivation. He did not ask Lu Yurong to go back because of her beauty, nor was it because he had other thoughts. It was for the sake of justification. Once the matter was settled, he would not allow Lu Yurong to return to Goddess Attraction Mountain. Everyone would know that the two of them were fakes. They had fooled the whole world, not to mention others. Zhou Dunley would not be able to face them. Are you sure? Lu Yurong asked. Chu Li shook his head. Don't worry. That's good. Lu Yurong smiled. When are we going back? It's best if we leave now, Chu Li said. Sure. Lu Yurong agreed without hesitation. Mount Yimen Li stood in front of a black bronze bell. He bent his finger and tapped it twice. A faint ringing sound could be heard. It was clearer than the previous time. He felt the prayer flashing in the bell and understood it in his heart. He was thinking, if he visualized these prayers in his mind and used them directly, would he be able to directly transmit his thoughts to the Outland? Then, he felt that he was thinking too much. Prayer should not be used like that. However, he had a feeling that these prayers were not simple. He needed to carefully explore its mysteries. It would definitely surprise him. Unfortunately, visualizing these prayers was not easy. He was currently focused on cultivating the dragon taming technique. He did not have the time to think about other things. It seemed like he could figure this out in his free time. Who knows, he might gain a lot from it. This thought flashed in his mind. Suddenly, he heard a dragon's roar in his mind. It was followed by the dragon's body. Then, a huge and mighty force pressed down on him like a mountain. He could not help but want to bend his knees and fall to the ground. The sky shone faintly in a golden light. It was faintly discernible in the beginning. Later, the golden light became brighter and brighter. Finally, a real dragon appeared. This dragon rode on the clouds and roamed in the sky. Soon, it reached the top of his head. Zhou Dunley floated down from the dragon's body. The real dragon roared and soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the clouds. Chu Li stared at the dragon. He used the omniscient mirror to observe it. He wanted to see its interior so that it would be more beneficial for cultivating the dragon taming technique. Unfortunately, the dragon looked slow, but its speed was unimaginably fast. If he did not have the omniscient mirror, it would have disappeared in a blink of an eye. Zhou Dunley was still looking at him kindly. He nodded in satisfaction. Lier, why did you call me back? Chu Li closed fist saluted. Did you teach Tang Haoyan a lesson? Zhou Dunley waved his hand and smiled. I did not do anything. Chu Li looked at him in confusion. This was strange. If Zhou Dunley did not do anything, Tang Haoyan would not be so obedient. I only gave him a few warnings. I did not let him act recklessly, Zhou Dunley said with a smile. Thank you, Master. Chu Li realized. He was right. Zhou Dunley said, you were too rash this time, but you're still young. That's how it is. Next time, remember to think carefully before you act. Don't act recklessly. Your life is very precious. You should cherish it more than others. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Zhou Dunley said seriously, I'm not joking. You should know that there are very few disciples in Goddess Attraction Mountain. It's better that you're here. In the past, we only had one heir. If we were to lose the inheritance because of your death, you would be a sinner. Even if you go to the Grandmaster's boundary, you won't have a good life. Chu Li's expression became serious. He nodded. Yes, I will be careful in the future. Your priority from now on is not to win, but to retreat in one piece. Zhou dumbly said, as long as you don't die, you will be an enlightened master. You can take revenge no matter what. Yes, Chu Li nodded. Zhou dumbly smiled. Lier, you're good at everything. You have a high aptitude. Unfortunately, you're too greedy for women. He could tell that Chu Li had reached the second level of the dragon taming technique. This time, he was severely injured by Tang Haoyan, but it was obviously a blessing in disguise, and he had improved a level. This kind of luck and aptitude was truly rare in the world. Dong Jianxin was far inferior to him, and it seemed that the next heavenly deity position was already in his bag. Master, I teamed up with the saint of the Holy Church of Light to deal with Tang Haoyan. Will he take revenge on the Holy Church of Light? Chu Li asked, embarrassed. Sigh. Zhou dumbly shook his head and looked at him with pity. Chu Li was confused. He did not know why he was like that. Zhou dumbly shook his head again and sighed. Chu Li was scared. Did Tang Haoyan take revenge on the Holy Church of Light? Well, Zhou dumbly shook his head. No. Chu Li asked. Then why are you sighing? I'm sad for you, Zhou dumbly said. Chapter 1496. Zhou dumbly sighed. One more woman means one more restraint. When you become an enlightened master in the future, you'll suffer more. You should know that the lifespan of an enlightened master is very short. Compared to the 300 to 400 years of a grandmaster's life, an enlightened master only had 60 years. Chu Li was stunned and slowly nodded. Zhou dumbly said, when that time comes, you'll have to be separated. You'll have to ascend to the grandmaster while they'll still be here. It'll be difficult. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. Isn't goddess attraction mountain an exception? We can enter and exit the grandmaster's boundary. Although we can't stay here permanently. Zhou dumbly shook his head. Do you see honorable masters figure on goddess attraction mountain? They can only come back to take a look. They can't stay here forever. It's just like how spirit beasts don't want to leave the 100,000 hills. Goddess attraction mountain isn't a good place to stay. Chu Li frowned and slowly nodded. Zhou dumbly continued. Besides the current Empyrean, the number of times the other Empyrean gods can come down every year is limited. They can't come more than twice. They can only meet each other twice a year. Think about how painful it is. So, it's best that you don't get involved with women so that you won't suffer in the future. Chu Li sighed. Yes. Zhou dumbly smiled. As for the Holy Church of Light, you don't have to worry. Tang Haoyan is an extremely intelligent person. He won't act recklessly. Knowing your relationship with Sun Mingyue, he won't take revenge on the Holy Church of Light. Chu Li sighed in relief and quickly said, Master, Sun Mingyue and I are just friends. Haha, friends. Zhou dumbly smiled and nodded. You're using the Supreme Diamond Supreme Scripture, right? Chu Li was stunned. Zhou dumbly smiled and shook his head. The only thing that could defeat an enlightened master at the Grandmaster's boundary is the Supreme Diamond Supreme Scripture. This Supreme Diamond Supreme Scripture is one of the top techniques in the Grandmaster's boundary. It's a secret technique of the Nalan Tua Temple. You're fortunate to be able to cultivate it. The secret techniques of the Nalan Tua Temple usually required both fate and fortune to be obtained. Only those who possessed both fortune and wisdom could cultivate it. Chu Li and Sun Mingyue were extremely fortunate to be able to cultivate it. The mystic arts of the Nanduo Temple were usually hidden in dangerous places. Luck and wisdom were indispensable, otherwise one would die. Chu Li's aptitude, wisdom, and luck were enough to make others envious. That was why he had become a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain. Otherwise, he would not have been able to become a disciple of the Goddess Attraction Mountain. He was the first person in 1,000 years who was not from the same faction to enter Goddess Attraction Mountain. Chu Li looked embarrassed. So Master already knows about it. I only found out after the fact. Zhou dumbly shook his head and said, You lured Tang Haoyan into that danger zone, and then used that danger zone to deal with Tang Haoyan. Fortunately, you did so, otherwise you might not be his match. Tang Haoyan's cultivation is far deeper than you think. Chu Li nodded. The fight this time was indeed very dangerous. Tang Haoyan seized the initiative in every aspect. In desperate straits, he used ruthlessness to be one step ahead. Especially the soul-chasing palm, it was really strange and unpredictable, impossible to block. If it wasn't for luring him into the 10 Absolute Valley and causing him to fall into the 10 Absolute Origin Ceiling formation, he didn't know what other secret techniques he had. Zhou Dunli was also certain that Chu Li and Sun Mingyue were cultivating the supreme diamond scripture through the Valley of 10 Despair, as well as the fact that Chu Li and Sun Mingyue had joined forces to fend off Tang Haoyan. Next time, don't take the initiative to provoke him, Zhou Dunli said. Tang Haoyan is now full of anger, but unfortunately, he can't find an excuse. If he really did find an excuse, he definitely wouldn't let it go and would use it to cause trouble. Yes, Chu Li Fizz saluted and said, "Thank you, Master." Zhou Dunli waved his hand. "You don't have to be so polite with me. Our Goddess Attraction Mountain has very few people, and we don't have that many schemes. We're all one family. You and your senior brother mustn't have a quarrel. Be tolerant and patient in everything." "Yes." Chu Li nodded firmly. Zhou Dunli was about to leave. Chu Li hurriedly said, "Master, I want to use the evil Dark Dragon to cultivate the dragon taming technique. What do you think?" "Evil Dark Dragon?" Zhou Dunli was surprised. 100,000 hills? Chu Li shook his head. "In the 10 Absolute Valley. It would be great if there was an evil Dark Dragon. Cultivating the dragon taming technique would be twice the result with half the effort." Zhou Dunli smiled. "But there's also a problem with the evil Dark Dragon." Chu Li listened attentively and looked at him. Zhou Dunli said, "In the beginning, your advancement will be very fast. You'll probably be able to quickly cross the first 3 levels. Unfortunately, once you reach the 4th level, your cultivation will be extremely slow." Chu Li pondered and seemed to be thinking. Zhou Dunli said, "Can you understand the reason behind it?" Chu Li said, "Is it because of its strength?" "Yes." Zhou Dunli said, "There are pros and cons to everything. It's the same with the evil Dark Dragon. In the first 3 levels, you'll benefit from the evil Dark Dragon's dragon energy and advance very quickly. However, from the 4th level onwards, the inner energy of the dragon taming technique will change its bloodline. But the evil Dark Dragon is too strong, and changing its bloodline is not easy. You'll need the inner energy of the dragon taming technique that's 10 times stronger than the spirit snake. Your advancement will be so slow that it'll be hopeless. You might not be able to endure it in the end." Chu Li nodded thoughtfully. Zhou Dunli said, "The best way is to cultivate with the evil Dark Dragon first and use the spirit snake from the 4th level onwards. Your advancement will be faster, and you'll probably be able to catch up to the heart's manifestation in less than a year." Chu Li shook his head and said, "There are pros and cons to everything. The spirit snake's transformation into a dragon has its disadvantages compared to the evil Dark Dragon's transformation, right?" "Yes, the spirit snake's transformation into a dragon requires it to first transform into a serpent before transforming into a dragon." Zhou Dunli nodded. "Although the evil Dark Dragon is a dragon, its bloodline is only equivalent to a serpent. It might be slightly better." Chu Li said, "Isn't it more difficult for a serpent to transform into a dragon? It also requires a large amount of inner energy from the dragon taming technique. Compared to cultivating with the evil Dark Dragon, it might require more inner energy." Zhou Dunli said, "Cultivating with the evil Dark Dragon and the spirit snake is like a child lifting a boulder. One is slowly growing from a small pebble until it becomes a boulder. You'll slowly get used to it. The other is directly lifting the boulder. The speed of advancement will be determined at a glance." Chu Li nodded thoughtfully. Zhou Dunli saw him like this and knew that he wanted to choose the evil Dark Dragon. He could not help but shake his head and laugh. This might be a common problem of geniuses. The best way is to use the evil Dark Dragon first, and then the spirit snake, Zhou Dunli said. Chu Li shook his head. "Master, I want to use the evil Dark Dragon. You can choose your own path. I won't interfere." Zhou Dunli nodded and said, "Then use the evil Nether Dragon." Having the evil nether dragon is also a good fortune. It just depends on whether or not you can enjoy it. However, the evil nether dragon's temperament is cruel, and it isn't something an ordinary person can tame. Chuli said, I saved it before, so we got along quite well. That's rare. Joe dumbly smiled. He secretly sighed at his disciple's good fortune to be able to tame the evil dark dragon. The evil dark dragon's bloodline was high. It looked at people like they were ants. It would not even look them in the eye. It was almost impossible for it to treat people as equals. No matter how painful an ant bite was, people would not value an ant. Chuli Fist saluted. Then I'll go to Ten Despair Valley to cultivate. That's good. Zhou dumbly nodded. It's quiet there. Tang Hao Yin won't dare to go there. Chuli nodded. He asked a few more questions about cultivating the dragon taming technique. Zhou dumbly explained them one by one. Then, Zhou dumbly summoned the golden dragon and rode it back to the outland. Chapter 1497. Tang Hao Yin's bright yellow robe fluttered in the wind. He looked bold yet domineering. He stood on top of a tree and looked into the distance, trying to break the formation here. Chuli sighed in relief. Fortunately, he had not discovered the cave. However, it was fine even if he did. The supreme diamond scripture had been destroyed. The man and woman could not get close, even with Tang Hao Yin's abilities. Tang Hao Yin saw him and had a complicated expression. He said, Chuli Fist saluted. Your Majesty, what brings you here again? Tang Hao Yin glided closer to him and carefully sized him up. Chuli's body tensed up. If he killed him here, Master Zhou Dunley would not be able to sense it. Even if Zhou Dunley guessed that he was the culprit and could avenge him, it would be too late. Tang Hao Yin shook his head. I didn't expect you to be so daring. Chuli said, I had no choice. The third prince is too much. He mobilized so many people just for a woman. Men live for women. Tang Hao Yin shook his head. That's understandable. He has the confidence to do so. He's my son, but you don't. Chuli said, I'm a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain now. I have the confidence to do so. That's true. Tang Hao Yin nodded. I can't afford to offend your master, so I won't kill you. Chuli frowned. Your Majesty, did you come here for no reason? You must have something to teach me. I won't kill you. Tang Hao Yin said, but the death penalty is unavoidable. Since you cripple my son, I'll cripple you. As he finished speaking, he struck with his palm. Chuli recognized it was the soul-tracking palm and easily dodged it. He looked up at the sky. It was a pity that it was past noon. He could not use the sun's fire to dispel the soul-tracking palm. Tang Hao Yin shook his head. You can't escape. You're not as fast as me. As he spoke, he sped up and suddenly appeared in front of Chuli, striking with his palm. Chuli had no choice but to use the Heavenly King palm, using the inner energy of the dragon taming technique. The inner energy of the dragon taming technique was rich like warm water. At the same time, a ray of light flashed in the sky and landed on his palm. Bang! Both of them took a step back at the same time. Tang Hao Yin's expression changed slightly. He felt the mellow inner force enter his body. His internal organs seemed to tumble, and he felt an indescribable discomfort. The palm force that seemed to have no edge was actually so powerful. The Heavenly King palm was hard and fierce, but the inner energy of the dragon taming technique was mellow and soft. In addition to the spiritual energy from the scripture of life and death, the combination of the three formed a unique palm force, which resulted in such power. Chuli felt that the soul-tracking palm's force had been mostly neutralized by the dragon-taming technique's inner energy. Although there was still some force that penetrated into his body and destroyed his body, the dragon-taming technique's inner energy quickly neutralized it. Chuli was surprised. He did not expect the dragon-taming technique to be so powerful. It seemed that he had underestimated it. Of course, they were in the Valley of Ten Despair. If they were outside, he would not be a match for Tang Hao Yin. Tang Hao Yin slammed his palm down again. Chuli countered with his Heavenly King palm. Bang! A muffled sound rang out, and both of them took 2 steps back. The grass beneath their feet undulated violently, as if a gale had blown past. Chuli did not feel anything strange when he took a step back, but Tang Hao-Yin felt his internal organs tumble again. He felt even more uncomfortable. Although he did not suffer any internal injuries, his whole body felt strange. He stared at Chu Li and sized him up. "Young man, what heart technique is this?" Chu Li shook his head. "The dragon taming technique." "What a great dragon taming technique," Tang Hao-Yin said in a low voice. "As expected of the dragon taming technique." "I'm sorry," Chu Li said calmly. He secretly let out a long sigh of relief. He did not expect that he would be able to escape from death's door. The dragon taming technique was so powerful. Tang Hao-Yin said, "Do you think that the dragon taming technique can stop me?" He suddenly stretched out his hands and drew a semicircle in front of his chest. His body seemed to expand, but it was only Chu Li's feeling. His body did not change. It was just that his aura was different and his heart technique was different. Tang Hao-Yin pushed out both of his palms silently. Chu Li took a step sideways to avoid it. His intuition told him that he was in danger. Naturally, he would not recklessly face it. He suddenly turned around and used the heavenly king palm again. A ray of light flashed in the sky and landed on his palm, forming a vague palm print. It collided with the invisible palm force and made a loud noise, like a muffled thunder. Chu Li could not help but take 2 steps back. His blood was boiling. His palm could actually turn. It was really strange. Tang Hao-Yin really knew a lot of secret skills. He immediately realized that becoming an enlightened master must be very boring. No matter how much one cultivated, there was a limit to the growth of one's cultivation level. Therefore, he could only use it to cultivate those secret skills. There must be many other secret skills, and it was hard to defend against them. Tang Hao-Yin pushed both of his palms forward again. Chu Li took a step forward to face it. As expected, he felt a warning behind him again. He turned around and attacked. Bam! He could not help but take 2 steps back. He was almost in front of Tang Hao-Yin. Tang Hao-Yin smiled. He was about to seriously injure Chu Li. Chu Li rushed out before Tang Hao-Yin could strike him with his palm. He changed his body movement technique, appearing to the left and then to the right. He avoided Tang Hao-Yin by a hair's breadth and dived into the pond. Tang Hao-Yin could be seen jumping into the clear water. The evil dark dragon was lying in the water, not moving. When it saw Chu Li and Tang Hao-Yin diving in, it slid gently and leisurely up to them. Chu Li used the dragon taming technique. It immediately narrowed its eyes and showed a comfortable expression. Tang Hao-Yin followed closely. When he saw Chu Li turn over and hide behind the evil dark dragon, he also turned over and chased after him. He did not touch the evil dark dragon. Such a giant beast was definitely not easy to deal with. However, when the evil dark dragon saw that he had entered its territory, it was very unhappy. It opened its big mouth and greeted him. Its dagger-like teeth flashed coldly as it tried to bite Tang Hao-Yin's head. Tang Hao-Yin's face darkened. He slapped both of his palms toward the evil dark dragon's chin. Bam! Even in the water, a muffled sound could be heard. The evil dark dragon swung its tail and slammed it toward Tang Hao-Yin. It was very angry. The 2 slaps had hurt it. The evil dark dragon stirred the pool water, forming a whirlpool that tore at Tang Hao-Yin. Tang Hao-Yin did not dare to get close. He swung his legs and retreated. At the same time, he pushed out his palms and attacked the evil dark dragon with a clear palm print. When the palm print touched the evil dark dragon, it disappeared without a trace. It chased after him without hesitation and kept opening and closing its mouth, wanting to bite him into several pieces. Tang Hao-Yin did not dare to face it head-on. He could only keep retreating. Unfortunately, his speed was far inferior to the evil dark dragon. In the blink of an eye, he was close again. Chu Li had been lying on the evil dark dragon's body. Suddenly, he stepped on the evil dark dragon and shot toward Tang Hao-Yin. Bam! The heavenly king palm collided with Tang Hao-Yin's palm force again. Tang Hao-Yin only felt a mellow and soft palm force enter his body. His internal organs churned again, and his movements became sluggish. The evil dark dragon suddenly sped up and chased after him, wanting to swallow Tang Haoyan in one bite. Tang Haoyan spat out a mouthful of blood and suddenly turned into a shadow. In the blink of an eye, he appeared 30 feet away. Then, he became faster and faster. In the blink of an eye, he had already drilled out of the pool. Chuli was overjoyed. He had used a secret skill, and his vitality was greatly injured. It was the best time to chase after him. He patted the evil dark dragon. The evil dark dragon seemed to sense his thoughts and suddenly sped up. It was faster than when it was on the shore, and in the blink of an eye, he was sent to the surface of the pool. Chuli leaped out and landed on the shore. He saw that Tang Haoyan was about to leave. Chapter 1498. Tang Haoyan's body paused for a moment before he soared up again and was about to disappear from Chuli's sight. Chuli shouted, "Master will definitely talk to you if he hears this. You'll suffer a great loss. Why don't we have a good chat?" "Umph." Tang Haoyan sneered and finally disappeared. Chuli smiled. He had tested Tang Haoyan's fear of Zhou Dunli. It was obvious that Tang Haoyan could not defeat Master Zhou Dunli, and the difference was huge. He had no chance of winning. He sat cross-legged on the grass and channeled to calm himself down. Although the fight was short, it was extremely dangerous. If Tang Haoyan had cut his vital parts, then there would be no point in living. He wondered if Tang had gone crazy. As a prince, he could only look at the beauties he had collected, but could not touch them. It must be a painful feeling. That was why Tang Hao hated himself so much. The evil nether dragon growled and came out of the pool to him. Chuli channeled all the inner energy of the dragon taming technique into its body and experienced its enjoyment and comfort. Thanks to its help earlier, he would not have escaped Tang Haoyan's pursuit. This time, the evil nether dragon saved his life again. The life and death scripture extracted spiritual energy from beyond the heavens and quickly transformed it into the inner energy of the dragon taming technique. The inner energy of the dragon taming technique continuously flowed into the evil nether dragon's body. The only thing he could repay the evil nether dragon was the inner energy of the dragon taming technique to strengthen it. If it could really transform into a golden dragon, then he would gain a lot. He could enter the Grandmaster's boundary and capture Grandmasters or even enlightened masters. How free and unrestrained would that be? The life and death scripture absorbed the spiritual chi from the heavens beyond the heavens endlessly, and the art of dragon control did not stop circulating either. His powerful soul energy ensured that he could cultivate for a long time, and he cultivated for a day and a night in one go. The evil nether dragon growled. Chuli felt a trace of dragon energy appear and absorbed it. Immediately, he reached the 3rd level, and the dragon taming technique rose to the 3rd level. The 3rd level of the dragon taming technique became purer and more comfortable after being channeled into its body. The evil nether dragon lazily fell asleep. Chuli shook his head and laughed. It was already nighttime. The sky was filled with stars, and a crescent moon hung in the middle. He thought for a moment, and suddenly sensed something. He immediately flew up and directly drilled out of the Valley of 10 Extremes, standing on the peak of the mountain, under the starry sky. The peak of the mountain was exceptionally clear. The night breeze was gentle, and the surrounding forests and mountains were all bathed in the moonlight. It was hazy and mysterious, quiet and peaceful. A fierce battle was taking place in the backyard of the Rin public house. Lu Yurong and her 9 handmaidens formed a battle formation and were surrounded and attacked by 10 men in black. The back garden was brightly lit as if it was daytime. These men in black had their faces covered and were dressed in black. Their martial arts skills were tyrannical, and they were grandmasters. Although they were not as good as the grandmasters sent by the Fu dynasty to kill him, they were still rare masters in the Great Ji dynasty. Lu Yurong's face was covered with a white veil, revealing a serious look in her eyes. These 10 masters were weaker than Lu Yurong and the 9 servants. They were constantly being suppressed. If it wasn't for Lu Yurong, who was controlling the formation, suppressing her strength, and not going all out, the 10 men in black would have been dead by now. Lu Yurong clearly had the upper hand, but she did not go all out. Instead, her expression was solemn. She suddenly shouted, "If you don't retreat now, don't blame me for being merciless." The 10 men in black sneered and suddenly sped up their attacks, activating their secret technique. The pressure on Lu Yurong and the others increased abruptly. The 9 maids had to use all their strength to maintain the formation. The power of these 10 men's secret technique was shocking. The eyes that were exposed from the black veil were bloodshot. Their gaze was like lightning, like the eyes of a beast. Lu Yurong scoffed. "If that's the case, then die." Her hands gradually became transparent. The original blood color disappeared, and her palms turned into a pair of white jade palms. The 9 maids did the same. Suddenly, it was as if 10 white jade beauties were waving their palms. The surrounding cold air was as if winter was coming. Other than Lu Yurong, the other 9 maids all used their secret technique. Bang, 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 bang. 4 men in black were sent flying by Lu Yurong. The 9 maids immediately sighed in relief. Suddenly, a black shadow appeared behind Lu Yurong and hit her with a palm. It was as fast as lightning, and no one could react. Although Lu Yurong had been vigilant, she still could not avoid it. Bang! She flew straight out and hit the pillar of the pagoda. The pagoda shook as if it was going to collapse. The power of this attack was obvious. Lu Yurong vomited blood and fell in the pagoda. The man in black floated into the pagoda like a ghost and stood beside Lu Yurong. He looked down at her and sighed. Once again, he raised his right palm and lightly hit her. Bang! Chuli suddenly appeared and blocked the attack with his palm. It was like a thunderclap. The white gauze curtains in the pagoda fluttered as if a strong wind was blowing. Chuli did not care about him anymore. He bent down and reached out to Lu Yurong's back. A gurgling spiritual energy seeped into her and healed her internal organs. She was already seriously injured and almost died. The man in black's attack was overbearing and powerful. The man in black stared at Chu Li, motionless as if he was stunned. After a while, his body relaxed. His originally sealed body returned to normal. His heart was in turmoil. He stared at Chu Li in shock. He never thought that Chu Li's cultivation level was so high. Chu Li turned his back to him and said, "I don't want to know who you are. If you want to live, get out of here." He pressed his palms on Lu Yurong's back and controlled a steady stream of spiritual energy to heal her body. He then remembered that this was not Tin Despair Valley, where he could use spirit pills. He helped Lu Yurong up and pulled her into his arms. He took out a jade bottle and stuffed a spirit blessing pill into it. The man in black's eyes flickered. He looked at Chu Li and then at Lu Yurong. Chu Li turned his head and looked at him impatiently. "Are you going to stay? Get out." This shout was mixed with a strong inner energy and the Buddhist lion's roar. It was very powerful. The man in black's eyes were dazed for a moment. He suddenly felt fear and turned to leave. The other men in black quickly jumped out of the battle and helped their fallen comrades up. They left in a hurry and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The 9 maids were relieved. Their faces were pale. Although the secret skill was stopped, they were still very weak. Son-in-law. They closed fists saluted. They had followed Lu Yurong to Goddess Attraction Mountain. They only came back this time. They did not know that Lu Yurong and Chu Li were just faking their marriage. They thought that he was the real son-in-law. Chu Li appeared in time to save Lu Yurong, and they were very grateful. Chu Li waved his hand. Lu Yurong slowly woke up. Her eyes lit up when she saw Chu Li. Then she smiled and said, "You're here, my lady. Thank God the son-in-law appeared and saved you. If not," a pretty maid, Xiao Wan, said hatefully, "These people deserve to die. We shouldn't have let them go." She looked at Chu Li as she spoke. Seeing that the lady was so heavily injured, and yet she let the murderers go, she felt indignant. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. Lu Yurong sighed. "Let them go. My lady, they came to kill us. Why did you show mercy?" Xiao Wan said angrily. "You showed mercy, but they didn't. If the son-in-law didn't appear in time, that guy would have hit you again and killed you." "Yes, I know." Lu Yurong nodded. Chapter 1499. Chuli waved his hand. You guys go out first. I need to talk to Euron. Yes. Xiao Wan and the other ladies curtsied and flew out, disappearing in the blink of an eye. There were only the two of them in the huge backyard. Euron gently pushed him away. Chuli let go and shook his head. That was a vicious attack, aiming for your heart. It was meant to take your life. Euron was silent, staring into the distance. Her expression was gloomy and lost. Chuli did not say much. He just sat aside. After a while, Euron sighed. I knew this day would come. I just didn't think it would happen so soon. Chuli said, making a move early is more decisive. What's the point? Euron shook her head. They should know I won't do anything unfavorable. That's hard to say. Chuli smiled. People's hearts are unpredictable. They trust themselves more. Plus, they've already offended you. You have a grudge. Even if you don't do it now, as the grudge ferments and someone provokes you, it's easy to backfire. You're right. Euron nodded. Chuli smiled. I'm also one of the reasons. Sigh. Euron sighed. I knew this would happen and cleared my mind. But when it really happened, I realized it's not that easy to accept. Emotions are as thin as paper. Chuli said, this is how the world is. Power is too powerful for human nature. No one dares to believe it. Euron turned to look at him. If it were you, would you do the same? Chuli pondered and shook his head. I don't know. I've never encountered such a situation. Lu Euron rolled her eyes at him and scoffed. Men value power too much. Chuli nodded. Euron sighed. Fine, if that's the case, then let the past go with the wind. We can completely let it go. Chuli smiled. Putting down the butcher's knife is a sign of wisdom. Euron, you have the root of wisdom. I won't become a monk. Euron scoffed. Chuli said, you're going to let him go? What else? Euron said, you wouldn't dare to kill him, right? Chuli nodded slowly. Lu Euron said, you can weigh the pros and cons and not be swayed by emotions. You're no different from him. Chuli could not help but laugh. That's true. The impact of killing him would be too great. The two houses of High Dukes will be affected, and the houses of High Dukes will be finished. But you should also give up on him. I've given up. Lu Euron nodded lightly. I've given up on everyone. You don't want to help Suin? Chuli smiled. Suin is kind-hearted and has an outstanding Buddhist nature. You can trust him. He would never do such a thing. Forget it. Lu Euron sighed. I'm sick of these things. I want some peace and quiet. Forget it then. Chuli did not force him. He smiled and said, then go to Goddess Attraction Mountain and cultivate well. If your martial arts are strong enough, he won't dare to act recklessly. I'm just afraid that he won't let the House of High Dukes go. Lu Euron frowned. Chuli pondered for a moment. What do you want? How about giving him a warning? Lu Euron asked. Chuli shook his head. Lu Euron rolled her eyes. Chuli said, warning is useless. Instead, it will make him more confident. I have a way to protect the House of High Dukes. Say it. Lu Euron said. Chuli smiled. Let Master Xiao Taiyin go to the imperial residence of King and Big Brother. Lu Euron was stunned. She scoffed. Let others know that the House of High Dukes has sided with Suin? You still want me to help Suin? Chuli said, there is no retreat. You should know this. Openly supporting Suin will make him worry. Otherwise, he will secretly eliminate the masters of the House of High Dukes. Lu Euron frowned and did not say a word. She was thinking about the pros and cons of this method. The cons were naturally the high risk. If Suin could not become the emperor in the future, he would definitely be punished. Also, changing sides would not be good for the reputation of the House of High Dukes. However, when she thought about the grievances she had suffered before, the rest of the houses of High Dukes would understand. Although the houses of High Dukes had to be loyal to the Great Ji dynasty, they should not be sacrificed like this. Changing sides out of anger was not considered betrayal. Moreover, Suin was the grandson of the Lung family. More importantly, the crown prince had been decided. If there were no major changes, the throne would be stable. Suin had no chance to become the emperor. Once the crown prince became the emperor, Suin would not be able to protect the House of High Dukes. No matter how she thought about it, the cons outweighed the pros. Siding with Su and was a bad move. There was only one advantage to this method. Suin would put them in an important position. If he really became the emperor in the future, the Ren Public House would be the biggest contributor. Of course, they would still be ranked behind the Yi Public House. More importantly, Suin had Chu Li's support. Lu Yurong did not have confidence in Suin. However, she had confidence in Chu Li. He could always make the impossible possible and create miracles. Chu Li saw that her eyes were flickering. He smiled. How is it? All right. Lu Yurong nodded slowly. She stared at him. Then I will help you this once. Chu Li smiled. With your help, there was originally a 10% chance. Now, there's 20%. Lu Yurong scoffed. It seems that you have no confidence. Things have always been difficult, but it is precisely because it is difficult that the harvest is greater. Chu Li said, don't forget about Su An's identity. He's a Buddhist. Once he inherits the throne, he'll be far above the crown prince among the enlightened masters. Lu Yurong nodded lightly. She had thought of this before, which was why she had agreed in the end. After this incident, Lung Wufeng must have hated this feeling of helplessness even more. As an enlightened master, he could not be invincible. He was trapped by the Tempest Temple internally, and Fu Dynasty's Tang Haoyan externally. He definitely did not want his descendants to suffer the same fate. Initially, he could only choose King Jing. Now that he had Suin, if Suin was good enough, he might also choose Suin. Once Suin revealed his intention to fight for the throne, it was not as if he did not have a chance. Chu Li said, once Master Xiao Taiying has entered the imperial residence of King An, we will request to see the crown prince. Sure. Lu Yurong pursed her lips and smiled. Under the setting sun, the crown prince's residence was magnificent and majestic. An angry roar came from the study of the crown prince's residence. You're telling me about such a small matter? What I need you for? Get lost. Get lost. A middle-aged man walked out of the study in a sorry state. He stood outside the door and tidied up his clothes. He looked inside helplessly and sighed while shaking his head. Light footsteps were heard. The original consort Jing, who is now the crown princess, walked in elegantly in a brocade gown. Her brocade gown shimmered under the setting sun. She was followed by two maids. When the middle-aged man saw the crown princess, he immediately closed fist saluted. What happened, Mr. Chu? Why is His Highness so angry? The crown princess asked gently. Sigh. Chu Lu shook his head and said softly, I heard that the heir to the High Duke of the Ren Public House, Lu Yulo, went to King An's imperial residence this afternoon and hasn't come out since. Oh. The crown princess frowned. Yulo went to King An's imperial residence? Yes. Chu Lu said softly, this is no small matter. The crown princess smiled. It's not a big deal. The head chief of King An's imperial residence is Yulo's brother-in-law now. It's fine to go and see him. Mr. Chu, you've been wronged. Chapter 1500. The crown princess, Lu Xiaomei, stood outside the study and did not move. After a while, the crown prince's voice was heard. Why are you standing outside? Come in. Lu Xiaomei entered the study and saw the crown prince pacing around with his hands behind his back. His face was full of annoyance and anger. She approached the crown prince and asked softly, Your Highness, are you worried about the Jade Tower? That bastard. The crown prince stopped and said hatefully, Ungrateful son of a B*****. Lu Xiaomei sighed. Ever since he became the crown prince, his temperament had changed. His temper was worse than before, and he would scold people easily. The crown prince was a different person now. Could it be that power could change a person so quickly? The crown prince turned to look at her. Are you here to plead for him? Your Highness, please calm down. Lu Xiaomei handed him the tea on the table and said softly, Why did he go to the imperial residence of King An? Although the emperor has wronged Yurong, it shouldn't be this extreme, right? She felt that the Ren public house's reaction was too extreme. This was not Yurong's style of doing things. After all, she had a good relationship with the Ren public house. They were related by blood. She would not easily betray the crown prince. Moreover, The crown prince's throne was stable. No matter how angry Euron was, she would not harm the Republic House. There might be some misunderstanding. It was fine as long as it was solved. It was not worth getting so angry. Seeing the crown prince being so agitated, was there something he was hiding from her? Logically, the crown prince knew Euron very well and knew she would not do anything reckless. The crown prince's eyes flashed and scoffed. Euron might be angry at me for not speaking in front of the emperor. Lu Xiaomei said softly, Euron is a sensible person. She should know that your highness's words are useless. What's sensible? The crown prince sneered and sat back on the armchair. Lu Xiaomei frowned. Is there something your highness is hiding from me? She still trusted Euron because they grew up together. She knew Euron's personality. Although she was smart, she was also loyal and would not betray anyone easily. This matter would not make her betray anyone. The crown prince avoided her gaze and shook his head. I have nothing to hide. Your highness. Lu Xiaomei frowned. You and I are one. Are you hiding something from me? The crown prince shook his head and said, Anyway, if she leaves us this time, do you think I can bear it? Why is it? Lu Xiaomei said, Is it because your highness didn't plead with the emperor? Or does she hate your majesty, so she wants to throw the royal court into chaos? Yes. Right. The crown prince hurriedly nodded and said, She must have this idea. She wants the imperial court to be in a mess as revenge against father. Sigh. Lu Xiaomei sighed. If I were to encounter such a thing, I would be disheartened as well. I would be disappointed in the Ji dynasty and the emperor. Sure. The crown prince hurriedly put a finger in front of his lips and glared at her. What nonsense are you talking about? Lu Xiaomei gently shook her head and said, I've always been very sad. The emperor is making things difficult for a woman. It's really disappointing. Shut up. The crown prince's expression changed. He looked left and right and said in a bad mood, Do you think imperial father can't hear you? So what if his majesty hears it? Lu Xiaomei snorted. If he can do it, can't other people say it? As Euron's aunt, can't I say something fair? You. The crown prince helplessly sighed and said, Do you think imperial father doesn't feel aggrieved? Imperial father feels aggrieved more than anyone else. But what can he do? It's the Fu dynasty we're talking about, the Fu dynasty that we can't defeat. Even so, we can't sacrifice a woman, Lu Xiaomei said. The crown prince said, Women aside, even I, the crown prince, have to be sacrificed when it's time. Everything is for the Ji dynasty. Lu Xiaomei shook her head and did not say anything else. She sighed and said, I'll persuade Euron. Don't persuade her. They've already done it. What's the point of persuading them? It's not like you don't know what kind of person she is. Once she takes action, no one can persuade her. The crown prince said in a bad mood. Sigh. Lu Xiaomei faintly sighed. Could it be that she wants to go against you? That's for sure. The crown prince sneered. Looks like that brat, Su, and is starting to get restless. Your highness, he's the emperor's grandson, Lu Xiaomei advised. There's no need to lower yourself to his level. You'll only mess things up. Don't underestimate this brat. The crown prince sneered and shook his head. If he really wants the throne, he's no less of a threat than King Ping. Lu Xiaomei frowned. Could it be because of Euron? Euron is smarter than a monkey. Would she fight a battle she's not confident in? The crown prince's face darkened. He scoffed. Since she dared to seek refuge in the imperial residence of King In, it means that the imperial residence of King and has enough confidence. I think I should persuade Euron. Lu Xiaomei said, I'll invite Euron to the imperial residence. When the time comes, you'll apologize to her personally, and this matter will be over. Who else is more reassuring than her? The crown prince slowly nodded. A bright moon hung high in the sky. Its clear light shone on the fairy's capital. The crown prince's residence was also bathed in its clear light. The backyard was brightly lit, but it was very quiet. There was a small pagoda in the middle of the flower bed. Euron, Lu Xiaomei, and the crown prince sat in the pagoda. There were no maids or protectors. Lu Xiaomei personally poured tea and wine. Euron, you're quite bold to come alone. The crown prince sat in the main seat and looked at Yurong casually. Yurong wore a white tunic and a white veil covered her face. Only her bright eyes could be seen. She said lightly, "Why wouldn't I dare? The fairy's capital is peaceful. Who would dare to assassinate me on the streets? Aunt, don't bother. I'll leave after saying a few words." Lu Xiaomei said angrily, "Why are you leaving? You're treating me like an outsider." Yurong smiled faintly and glanced at the crown prince. "Looks like Uncle didn't tell you what happened." The crown prince quickly said, "Yurong, are you going to seek refuge with Suin?" Yurong nodded. "If I don't seek refuge with someone else, I'm afraid I'll die a horrible death. I have no other choice." "Yurong, what do you mean?" Lu Xiaomei frowned. She looked at the crown prince hesitantly. The crown prince scoffed. "Don't try to drive a wedge between me and your aunt. You really are going to betray me." Yurong laughed softly. "I didn't expect Uncle to be so shameless. Don't you know why I betrayed you?" What do I know?" the crown prince said coldly. "I just wanted to test you. I was right. I really have to thank Uncle for being merciful." Yurong laughed coldly. "Test me? To see if I'll die or not." "Yurong," Lu Xiaomei frowned. "Your uncle is going to kill you. Ask Uncle." Yurong stared coldly at the crown prince. Lu Xiaomei looked at the crown prince with a dark face. The crown prince coughed. "I just wanted to test her. I didn't expect her to seek refuge with someone else." Yurong scoffed. "If it wasn't for Chu Li coming in time to scare you away, I'd be in my grave now." Chapter 1501. The crown prince looked at her and shook his head. He had nothing to say, knowing that he could not fool her. He got married at the age of 18, and it had been 30 years since then. She was the one who understood him the most. He could hide his words from others, but not from her. Lu Yurong sighed. "Aunt, I didn't even cry." "Why are you crying?" "What a poor girl." Lu Xiaomei took out a handkerchief from her sleeve and wiped her eyes. She sighed. "I didn't expect to be betrayed by the person I trusted the most. He wanted to kill me. He must be furious." Lu Yurong said, "Aunt, you're wrong. I knew Uncle would do this. I just didn't think it would be so soon. I thought it would be a while later." "Yurong," Lu Xiaomei glared at her. "You always think so badly of people." Lu Yurong snorted softly and said, "Am I right this time? Aunt, don't meddle in these things. It's better to keep an eye on Long Feng. I've already kicked him out of the public house and let him come back." "Yurong, don't make things difficult for Feng Er," Lu Xiaomei quickly said. Lu Yurong said, "Don't worry. I'm not Uncle. I'm not that cruel. I'm not that heartless to turn my back on you." "Shut up." The crown prince slammed the table and shouted, "You think you're in the right? You betrayed me, and you're still so unscrupulous. You're shameless." Lu Yurong laughed coldly and said, "That's right. I've already betrayed you. Let me ask you, what would your subordinates think? Who would still believe you? Who would still be loyal and not be afraid of becoming the next me? Don't try to drive a wedge between us. I won't fall for it." The crown prince curled his lips in disdain. "As long as they want wealth, they'll have to work hard for me. I won their loyalty not because of friendship, but because of my status. All right, when your status is taken away, I'd like to see who else will be by your side." Lu Yurong sneered. "I don't think that day is too far away. Uncle, you better be prepared." "Just you and that kid Suin?" The crown prince shook his head in disdain. "You're useless. No matter how capable you are, he's just a grandson, not a prince. He has no right to fight for the throne." "Not necessarily," Lu Yurong scoffed. "Don't forget about Chu Li." "Chu Li." The crown prince gritted his teeth. If it were not for Chu Li, he would have gotten rid of Lu Yurong and shifted the blame to Tang Yi without anyone knowing. The Ren public house would only hate the Fu dynasty and serve him. Without Lu Yurong, he could use the Ren public house without worry. Chu Li is a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain. If he becomes an enlightened master in the future, Suin won't be so powerless against the Fu dynasty anymore. He won't be as sullen as the emperor. I believe the emperor will consider this carefully. Impossible. The crown prince's face changed, and his heart sank. Lu Yurong said, "The emperor's heart is hard to fathom. Who knows if it's possible? It's too naive to expect the emperor to pass the throne to you, just because you're the crown prince. I'm sure you know how ruthless the emperor can be. The crown prince fell silent. Of course, he knew that accompanying the emperor was like accompanying a tiger. It was the same even for the emperor's son. The emperor had always placed the Lung family's empire above all else. He had cast aside his personal feelings. Otherwise, he would not have abandoned Lu Yurong so easily. Lu Xiaomei sighed. Yurong, since you know that the emperor's heart is hard to fathom, why bother getting involved in this mess? Lu Yurong glanced at the crown prince and laughed coldly. If I don't help Su, uncle-in-law will kill me. If I help Su, uncle-in-law won't dare to do anything rash. I'm only trying to save my life. I have no choice. Excuses? The crown prince laughed coldly. You're hiding in Goddess Attraction Mountain. How can I go there? Lu Yurong said. Am I supposed to hide in Goddess Attraction Mountain for the rest of my life? Besides, why should I hide in Goddess Attraction Mountain instead of walking openly in the Great Ji Dynasty? Your Highness, let's see who's better. Let's see who's the emperor, you or Suin. Fine, fine. The crown prince gritted his teeth. Do you think Suin will win for sure? Lu Yurong said lightly. Who knows what will happen in the future? If Suin fails, he can return to the Titanium Temple unscathed. What about you? The crown prince laughed coldly. You'll still be abandoned. That's still better than being killed by you now. Lu Yurong said. How about this? I won't kill you. The crown prince said in a low voice. Leave the imperial residence of King, and Lu Yurong smiled disdainfully. She raised the wine cup, looked at the wine in it, and slowly put it down. What are you doing? Are you afraid that I'll poison it? The crown prince asked. Lu Yurong scoffed. Try drinking this. She pushed the wine cup over in annoyance. The crown prince flicked his finger, and the white jade cup flew out, disappearing into the bushes. Lu Yurong laughed coldly, but did not say anything. Lu Xiaomei frowned and glared at the crown prince. She did not expect him to use her subordinates to poison her. Lu Yurong did not have her guard up against her. If she accidentally drank it, it would really poison her to death. Lu Yurong said, Your Highness, it's best if you don't use such tricks in the future, or else you'll be asking for trouble. Are you threatening me? The crown prince laughed coldly. You're already working for the imperial residence of King N. That's right. Lu Yurong scoffed. Your Highness, I know everything about you. Don't force me to use those tricks. Fine, fine. The crown prince gritted his teeth and nodded hard. I've really fed an ingrate. I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. You couldn't kill me in one hit, Lu Yurong said coldly. Actually, you'd already killed me at that time. I'm not the Lu Yurong from before. Your Highness, be careful. Lu Yurong, you can't escape from me. The crown prince scoffed. Don't think that everything will be fine just because you have Chuli. Don't forget that there's still the Rin public house. That depends on your Highness's tricks. Lu Yurong smiled faintly. Hee, it's so lively. Chuli appeared at the bottom of the pagoda stairs. He walked into the pagoda and closed fists saluted with a smile. Your Highness, Princess, please forgive me for visiting without notice. The crown prince squinted his eyes and stared coldly at Chuli. The crown prince's imperial residence had a formation. Other than the main entrance, no one could enter. Could it be that he entered from the main entrance? More importantly, he had snuck in without anyone noticing. What was worse was that he did not even sense his presence. If he closed his eyes, there would be no one in front of him. This Chuli had truly reached the realm of the integration of heaven and man. He was too much a threat to him. Chuli looked at Lu Yurong and sat beside her with a smile. Have you caught up? Princess, Lu Yurong came here today because of you. As for your Highness, there's really nothing to say about your enemy who wants to kill you. Head Chief Chu, Lu Xiaomei sighed. I'm relieved that Lu Yurong can follow you. Chuli smiled. Don't worry, Princess. We'll take our leave first. Then I won't send you off. Lu Xiaomei smiled. Chuli looked at Lu Yurong. Lu Yurong nodded. He grabbed Lu Yurong's slender waist, and the two disappeared in a flash. Chapter 1502. P.S. The 43rd Guild Master has been born. The guild master's soybean milk is flowing. Lu Xiaomei quietly watched him go crazy and did not stop him. After a while, seeing that the crown prince had calmed down, she spoke. Your Highness, there's no point in regretting now. Think about the future. Yurong will become a strong opponent. We must be on our guard. Who's regretting? The crown prince scoffed. Lu Xiaomei did not refute and calmly said, Head Chief Chu is here to demonstrate his power. Truly, the crown prince slowly uttered these two words, emphasizing each word. He completely calmed down and sat by the stone table. It's all right, both of them are going to Goddess Attraction Mountain. Once there, they will focus on cultivation. They won't personally interfere with Su En's matter. That's good. Lu Xiaomei nodded lightly. The crown prince said, the key now is still Su En. If Su En can return to the Titanium Temple, then we'll be taking drastic measures. The Titanium Temple can't affect anyone, Lu Xiaomei said. That might not be the case. The crown prince smiled. Back then, I saved the life of a monk from the Titanium Temple. Now is the time to return the favor. As long as I can summon Su En back to the Titanium Temple, no matter how powerful Lu Yurong is, she won't be able to do anything. Will it work? Lu Xiaomei asked. The crown prince smiled. This is my last move. I originally wanted to use it 2 years later to ensure a smooth succession, but now I have to use it, lest anything unexpected happens. Once Su En's momentum rises and the Titanium Temple calls him back, he may not obey. Lu Xiaomei smiled. Your Highness is better at chess. You can beat your own this time. The crown prince shook his head and sighed. Forcing me to use this move. Lu Yurong really deserves to die. It was precisely because he knew how powerful Lu Yurong was that he was so afraid. If he used this move now, it would only solve the immediate problem, but the consequences would not be small. Once Su En returned to the temple and came out again, he might not be able to stop him. He originally planned to use it on the eve of the coronation, not giving Su En a chance to turn the tables. Once Su En returns to the Titanium Temple, he would be able to take the throne without waiting for him. If he used it now, the power of this move would be reduced by more than half. Lu Xiaomei said, Your Highness, you must not harbor such thoughts again. Isn't head steward Chu here to demonstrate his power? If you hurt Yurong, you will definitely seek revenge. He can sneak in without a sound. It's impossible to guard against him. Oomph. The crown prince laughed coldly and said, He won't dare to act recklessly. If he wants to kill me, Father will definitely make a move, and he will die without a doubt. Your Highness, Lu Xiaomei sighed. Chu Li severely injured Tang Yi, the Fu dynasty's third prince. I heard that he had rendered him impotent and crippled him completely. How could the Fu dynasty's emperor not do anything? Isn't he fine now? The crown prince frowned and nodded slowly. All right, then let's see whose schemes are better. As the crown prince, if I can't beat them, then I have nothing to say. When he thought of Chu Li's martial arts, he felt guilty. Lu Yurong arrived at a magnificent mansion. The plaque in front of the mansion had the words Lu Mansion written on it. It was the outer courtyard of the Rin public house in the fairy's capital. She rarely came here. As soon as she entered, she was led to the backyard by Lu Yulo. The backyard was brightly lit. Lu Yulo looked at her from head to toe. Judging from her expression, he was worried that she would cry. Seeing that Lu Yurong's expression was calm, he secretly sighed in relief. He scoffed. The crown prince must have something bad to say, right? Of course. Lu Yurong smiled. But he's also very angry. I think he won't be able to recover for a while. Sigh. Why did he have to do this? Lu Yulo sighed. We were originally a family, but it ended up like this. It's really regrettable. I really can't understand it. This is common in the emperor's family, Lu Yurong said. The crown prince's residence is not our house of high dukes. That's true, Lu Yulo nodded. But I talked to Su En for a long time. We got along very well. He's completely different from His Highness the Crown Prince. He's definitely worth relying on. Lu Yurong nodded. It was good when the Crown Prince was still King Jing. People change. We must be cautious. I don't believe that Su En will harm us, Lu Yulo said. Lu Yulo said, It's not good to be too good. It'll be hard for him to ascend to the throne. He's a disciple of the Titanium Temple. Even if he doesn't become the emperor, he can still stand in the imperial court and protect us. Lu Yulo smiled. So, little sister, don't worry. Cultivate well at Goddess Attraction Mountain. This is a rare opportunity. Yes. Lu Yurong nodded. Lu Yulo smiled. If Suin can become the emperor, then our house of high dukes will be able to hold our heads high. It'll be difficult. Lu Yurong frowned. I think the crown prince will soon have a backup plan. We must let Suin deal with it carefully. Of course. Lu Yulo smiled. But don't worry. If you and Chu Li work together, who can defeat you? Lu Yurong pursed her lips and smiled. They had always been opponents. She gave Chu Li a lot of trouble, but Chu Li resolved it all. Until now, she did not gain any advantage. She did not expect that they would become partners and turn around to deal with the crown prince. The changes in the world were truly unexpected. She would never have thought that it would come to this. Lu Yulo said, if the two of you combine your swords, you'll be invincible. You'll definitely help Su and seize the throne. Big brother, don't be so careless. I still need to go to King Anne's imperial residence to talk to Second Lady Xiao. Lu Yurong shook her head and stood up. What? Lu Yulo was stunned. He knew that Xiao Shi and Xiao Qi must hate Lu Yurong. Even if Chu Li helped her, it would be difficult to erase their hatred. If he wanted to see Xiao Shi now, he would have to look at her face. Lu Yurong said, you have to thank her and apologize. All right, Lu Yulo said, I'll go with you. Lu Yurong saw his worried face and nodded with a smile. When the two stepped into King Anne's imperial residence, Chu Li arrived at the Great Light Peak and the Divine Light Basilica. Sun Mingyue's white robe and veil seemed to have never changed. She covered her body and face. Her clear eyes glanced at Chu Li and said, why are you here again? One would not visit a temple without a cause. Chu Li would not come if he had nothing to do. Chu Li smiled. I still need your help. What help? Sun Mingyue scoffed. Don't tell me you're going to team up against the Enlightened Master again? Chu Li nodded slowly. Which one? Sun Mingyue asked. Chu Li said, Tang Haotian. Sun Mingyue's charming eyebrows furrowed. You still want to fight him? When she thought of the previous situation, she felt a lingering fear. She really did not want to meet Tang Haotian again. They might not be able to escape. They were no match for Tang Haotian. Chu Li said slowly, I have to fight. Are you going to help or not? No. Sun Mingyue scoffed. Chu Li smiled and looked at her. Sun Mingyue scoffed. You want to kill Tang Yi this time? You should have killed him last time to save yourself the trouble. Chapter 1503. Sun Mingyue's eyes brightened as she leaned forward. Are you really going to kill Tang Yi? Yes. Chu Li nodded slowly. I should have killed him the last time. Why not? Sun Mingyue looked at him curiously. Logically speaking, we're both dealing with enlightened masters. Wouldn't it be easier to just kill Tang Yi the last time? You shouldn't have made such a mistake. She knew that Chu Li was cruel and merciless, but he only crippled Tang Yi the last time and did not kill him. According to his temperament, he should have killed Tang Haotian. Even if he crippled Tang Yi and showed mercy, Tang Haotian would not let him go. Why did he not kill him? Chu Li shook his head. It's because of you. Sun Mingyue looked at him in shock. Chu Li said, crippling him and killing him are two completely different things. Once I kill Tang Yi, not only will I have to face Tang Haotian's pursuit, but I'll also have to face Tang Haotian's revenge afterward. I don't really care, but with Goddess Attraction Mountain as my backing, you're in trouble. Is it different now? Sun Mingyue asked. Chu Li smiled. My master's reputation is still useful, but if I kill Tang Yi, even my master can't stop Tang Haotian's crazy revenge. The Holy Church of Light will be in trouble. At least you have a conscience. Sun Mingyue nodded and frowned. If I kill him this time, won't I face the same crazy revenge? It's different. Chu Li shook his head. I have no choice but to kill him this time. He can't say anything. What's going on? Don't try to be mysterious. Sun Mingyue scoffed. Chu Li smiled. You know I'm proficient in the peeking skill. What did you see? Sun Mingyue frowned. She knew that Chu Li's peeking skill was of a high level, and he definitely had the ability to predict. He even gave her the Heavenly Heart technique and peeking skill when he was disguised as Zhao Dei. She practiced it, but it was too difficult to cultivate, so she stopped. From the heavenly heart technique and peeking skill, Chu Li was indeed a genius. Chu Li shook his head. It's hard to accurately observe when it comes to enlightened masters. In short, Tang Yi is a big problem. We can only solve the problem by killing him. I'll do it myself. Wait for me in front of Ten Despair Valley. When I get there, lure Tang Hao Hian into the valley. He won't fall for it, Sun Mingyue said calmly. Chu Li smiled. That might not be the case. He must really want to kill us. The last time he was blocked by Tang Hao Hian in the Valley of Ten Despair, the third stage of the dragon taming spell had blocked his soul-chasing palm. He did not know what other secret skills Tang Hao Hian had, so he was not confident that he could escape unscathed. Therefore, he still came to find Sun Mingyue. All right, up to you. Sun Mingyue nodded. At this moment, the sound of footsteps could be heard. A young lady in green walked in gracefully. Greetings, Saintess. The sect leader has just come out of seclusion and invites Saintess to meet him. Sun Mingyue looked at Chu Li. Please wait. Chu Li nodded. A group of people suddenly appeared at the foot of Star-Gazing Mountain. A group of yellow-robe guards clustered around a young man. He was tall and had a masculine face, but his expression was gloomy as if everyone owed him a debt. He was the third prince of the Fu dynasty, Tang Yi. He stood at the foot of the Stargazing Mountain with his hands behind his back, sizing it up. Two disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion floated down and approached the group of people. Su Shixing took 2 steps forward and fist saluted. The third prince of the Fu dynasty requests an audience with young master Li Xinghe. Senior brother Li? The 2 disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion frowned at Tang Yi. Why? Can't the third prince meet young master Li? Su Shixing asked. Why is young master Li so arrogant? Senior brother Li is in seclusion and won't meet outsiders. The 2 disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion shook their heads hesitantly. Please leave. Seclusion? When did he start? Su Shixing asked. The 2 disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion fist saluted. He just went into seclusion last night. He's probably at a critical juncture now, so we can't disturb him. Please forgive us, Your Highness. We won't be able to send you off. Su Shixing scoffed. We have an important matter to discuss with young Master Li. We must meet him no matter what. Please make an exception. As he spoke, he took out 2 gold ingots from his bosom and flicked them into their sleeves. The 2 disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion hurriedly waved their hands and tossed the ingots to Su Shixing. You mustn't do that. We're in charge of receiving guests, so we can't accept gifts from guests. There's nothing we can do about this. We saw Senior Brother Li in seclusion with our own eyes, and he specifically instructed us not to disturb him. Specifically instructed? Tang Yi suddenly asked. His face was still tough and masculine, but his eyes flickered with coldness. He glared at the 2 disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion. Did he specifically instruct you? Yes. The 2 looked at him strangely. Tang Yi scoffed. Did he specifically instruct you in the past? No. The 2 shook their heads. Tang Yi scoffed. Looks like Li Xinghe lives up to his reputation. He predicted that we would come. Su Shixing was stunned. Could it be that Li Xinghe predicted that we would come to ask for his help, so he went into seclusion to avoid us? That's right. Tang Yi sneered. This Li Xinghe is cunning. That's right. Su Shixing hurriedly nodded. Cunning. The eyes of the 2 disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion turned cold. Su Shixing smiled again. But this is precisely young Master Li's strength. He truly lives up to his reputation of being able to predict in advance. He truly lives up to his reputation. Your Highness, looks like we've come to the right place. Tang Yi looked at the 2 disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion and said indifferently, Li Xinghe is in seclusion. Sure, we'll just wait and set up camp here. We'll meet him when he comes out. The 2 disciples said helplessly, since that's the case, please follow us into the Stargazing Mountain. The mountain is simple and crude. I hope the third prince won't mind. I'm not that delicate. Tang Yi scoffed. The 2 disciples led Tang Ye's group into the Stargazing Mountain and into a cave. They then served tea and reminded them not to run around in the mountain lest they bump into others. After the two left, Su Shishing hurriedly asked, "Your Highness, why is Li Xinghe hiding from us?" "He doesn't want to offend Chu Li," Tang Yi scoffed. "It's easy to understand." Su Shishing frowned. Logically speaking, the stargazing pavilion isn't afraid of anyone. They're afraid of Goddess Attraction Mountain, too, Tang Yi said. Su Shishing slowly nodded. "Then what should we do? If he's hiding like this, are we supposed to just stay here and wait? Think of a way to force him out." Tang Yi scoffed. "These fellows from the stargazing pavilion are all cunning. If we don't force them, they won't do anything. If we force them," Su Shishing thought for a moment, "we can only use the Emperor's token." "All right," Tang Yi scoffed. "As long as we can get Li Xinghe here." Su Shishing closed fist saluted. "I'll handle it properly. Don't worry, Your Highness." "Go." Tang Yi took out a purplish gold token. It was about the size of a palm with the word Tang written on one side and Zhao written on the other. The two words were written in flamboyant calligraphy, as if they were about to burst out of the token. P.S. Update complete. Chapter 1504. Su Shishing smiled when he saw the gold medal. He received it respectfully with both hands and said, "Don't worry, Your Royal Highness. Go and return quickly." Tang Yi waved his hand impatiently. "Don't worry, Your Royal Highness." His expression suddenly turned cold, which was the complete opposite of his masculine appearance. Su Shishing nodded. He sighed to himself. Ever since Chu Li injured him, His Royal Highness seemed to have changed into a different person. His temper was getting worse and weirder, throwing a tantrum at the slightest provocation. It was not easy to work under a prince like this. Su Shishing strode out. Tang Yi glanced at the protectors around him and waved his hand. "All of you get out. It's not like you can do anything by standing around here." "Yes." Everyone closed fists, saluted, and left. They sighed helplessly. Chu Li was a top-notch master. It did not matter how many people they had. They could not be blamed. However, the prince would not think the same way. He must think that they were useless. 15 minutes later, Su Shishing strode in. "Your Royal Highness, if Li Xinghe doesn't come, you don't have to come back either." "Why did you come back? Are my word a joke?" Tang Yi said coldly with a gloomy face. "Am I crippled that my words don't matter anymore?" "Your Royal Highness." Su Shishing interrupted him. "Your Royal Highness, I've asked Li Xinghe to come out of isolation. He's in his cave now. Let's go see him, but only the two of us. No one else can follow us." How arrogant." Tang Yi sneered. "Looks like I'm not the prince, but he is." Su Shishing smiled helplessly. "This is the Stargazing Pavilion's territory. We should just follow the host and go see him. It's fine as long as he's willing to help us. A little impatience will spoil the great plan, right?" Tang Yi frowned at him and scoffed. "That makes sense. All right, let's go take a look." Su Shishing secretly let out a sigh of relief and hurriedly led the way. The two of them walked up the mountain and arrived in front of a cave dwelling. Su Shishing lightly knocked on the jade chime beside him. Amidst the clear sound, a deep and resounding voice came from inside. "Come in." Tang Yi sized up the cave. It was simple and unadorned. It was no different from an ordinary cave, except that it was brighter. It seemed like there was some kind of special arrangement hidden in it. The two of them turned two corners and arrived at a spacious stone room. The ceiling of the stone room was engraved with star maps. The stars that filled the sky dazzled the eyes. The surrounding stone walls were also engraved with star maps. The entire stone room was filled with a mysterious aura, giving people a sense of transcendence. Su Shishing said, "Young Master Li, this is our prince, the third prince." Tang Yi sized up the handsome young man in front of him and sighed inwardly. He was indeed young. To have such a reputation at such a young age, and his cultivation of the stargazing art was even better than his seniors, this kind of person was not normal. There was no need to stoop to his level. Thinking of this, he calmed down and cupped his fists. "Greetings, young Master Li. I have a request." "Welcome, Your Highness. Please excuse me for not going out to meet you." Li Xinghe stood up and gave a fist salute calmly. He gestured for Li Xinghe to take a seat while he sat down first. If your Royal Highness is here for Chu Li, I'll have to disappoint you. Oh, Tang Yi smiled. Although Chu Li is a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain, he's not an enlightened master. Is Stargazing Pavilion that afraid of him? I'm not afraid. Li Xinghe shook his head. We're not afraid of Goddess Attraction Mountain, but Chu Li is very strange. Our stargazing art can't see his fate and predict his every move. Oh, Tang Yi frowned. You can't predict him? Yes. Li Xinghe nodded. He's not an enlightened master, but he's like one. Stargazing Pavilion can't do anything to a person like him, so I can't help you, Your Royal Highness. I'm really sorry. I can't do anything even with the Emperor's gold medal. All right, I won't count Chu Li then. Tang Yi nodded slowly. I don't want to make things difficult for you. Help me count someone else then. We can give it a try. Please tell us, Your Royal Highness, Li Xinghe said. Tang Yi glanced at Su Shishing. Su Shishing smiled. It's Xiao Qi. Do you know her, young Masterly? Xiao Qi. Li Xinghe pondered and nodded slowly. Chu Li's wife, right? That's right. Su Shishing smiled. Young Masterly, you're really well informed. Chu Li's wife is also a famous person. She's the young lady of the High Duke's public house. She's both beautiful and talented, Li Xinghe said. Tang Yi calmly asked, Young Masterly, don't tell me you can't predict this too? He stared at Li Xinghe with bright eyes, as if he was ready to attack at any time. Xiao Qi isn't as unpredictable as Chu Li. Li Xinghe frowned. But she's someone close to Chu Li, so she'll be affected by him. Even if she can predict him, I'm afraid it'll be unclear. It's fine. I won't predict anything else. I just want to predict her whereabouts, Tang Yi said. Li Xinghe looked at him. Your Royal Highness, let me give you a piece of advice. Shut up, Tang Yi scoffed. Don't worry, I won't kill Xiao Qi. I'm only using her to threaten Chu Li so that he'll cripple his own martial arts. That's impossible. Li Xinghe shook his head. Chu Li isn't stupid. Then it's not up to him. Tang Yi sneered. Don't worry. No one will know that you're the one who predicted her whereabouts. There are many spies in the Fu dynasty, so it's not surprising that they accidentally saw Xiao Qi. Li Xinghe's expression turned solemn. He lifted his head to look at the ceiling of the stone chamber and reflected the star chart. He had already begun circulating the stargazing technique in his mind to peer into his own fate, avoid calamity, and seek fortune to see what would happen in the future. After a while, he lowered his head to look at Tang Yi and sighed. Please forgive me, Your Royal Highness. I'm afraid I can't help you with this. Tang Yi's expression turned gloomy as he stared at him coldly. If that's the case, even the gold medal won't work. Your stargazing pavilion is getting more and more powerful. You don't want to be a subject of the Fu dynasty anymore, do you? Li Xinghe sighed. To be honest, it's not that I'm not convinced by His Majesty's gold medal, but I can't afford to offend Chu Li. If I really let this go, my life will be in danger. I don't have His Majesty's support. He had just seen his own fate. With a single thought, he predicted Xiao Qi's whereabouts for Tang Yi. With that, he saw the scene of Chu Li looking for him and killing him. In that scene, Chu Li was like a god or a demon, while Li Xinghe was like a child in front of him. He had no power to resist and was killed in one blow. It was then that he truly understood how powerful Chu Li was. He did not dare to help Tang Yi. Tang Yi sneered. Do you think it's too late if you don't help me now? Li Xinghe's expression turned ugly as he stared coldly at Tang Yi. Tang Yi said faintly, Once we leave the mountain, everyone will know that we've been to Stargazing Pavilion and looked for you. Don't you think it's too despicable, Your Royal Highness? Li Xinghe scoffed. He wanted to slap Tang Yi to death, but he knew the consequences of doing so he could only swallow his anger. Chapter 1505. As expected of the Royal Highness. Li Xinghe chuckled and clapped his hands. All right, if that's the case, I have no other choice but to help the Royal Highness and eliminate Chu Li. That's for the best. Tang Yi smiled. However, if you inform Chu Li immediately after I leave, we'll be enemies with the Stargazing Pavilion. You'll be a sinner if you implicate the Stargazing Pavilion. The stargazing pavilion won't be destroyed so easily. Li Xinghe smiled. Tang Yi asked, what if Father does it himself? He hates traitors the most. If the stargazing pavilion helps Chu Li, they'll be traitors to the Fu dynasty. Father can't tolerate that, you know? Li Xinghe took a deep breath and nodded slowly. Yes, I understand. All right, I'll calculate Xiao Qi's whereabouts. Do I have her birth date and horoscope? Elder Su. Tang Yi gave him a look. Su Shishing retrieved a letter from his inner pocket and handed it to Li Xinghe after opening it. Li Xinghe took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. Although the stargazing pavilion was powerful, it was unfortunate that it did not have an enlightened master guarding it. Therefore, it could only yield to the emperor's threat. Otherwise, the stargazing pavilion would suffer greatly if the emperor barged in. Under normal circumstances, Tang Haoyan could not act recklessly due to the restrictions of the heavenly rules. However, if he was given an excuse, he would not show mercy. The stargazing pavilion and the other 8 major sects had always been a thorn in his side. The stargazing pavilion had been relying on the stargazing technique to seek fortune and avoid calamity. They did not give him an excuse, which was why they were safe until now. Once he found an excuse, he would definitely take the opportunity to act. He looked at the birth date on the white letter and activated the stargazing pavilion for a moment. Then, he frowned at the two and said coldly, Your Royal Highness, why are you joking with me? This is the birth date of a protector from the imperial residence. Unfortunately, he was unlucky and died a violent death. Tang Yi frowned and glared at Su Shishing. Su Shishing was stunned. He quickly touched his chest and took out another letter. He asked embarrassedly, Did I take the wrong one? He passed it to Li Xinghe as he spoke. Tang Yi said coldly, What else can you do? Su Shishing bowed and cupped his fists in apology. After receiving the white paper, Li Xinghe quickly operated the stargazing pavilion to calculate. His expression turned solemn as he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground, panting heavily without moving. Tang Yi and Su Shishing stared at him blankly. Li Xinghe's change was too fast. He was radiant just a moment ago, but now his complexion was ashen. It was as if he had suddenly aged 20 years. It was a little frightening, and people were worried that he would suddenly take his last breath. He gave off the feeling of a candle flickering in the wind. What's going on? Tang Yi asked. Li Xinghe shook his head softly. The backlash is too severe. I didn't expect Xiao Qi to have a treasure with her. The backlash is the stargazing technique. Tang Yi stared at him with a frown and said in a deep voice, Li Xinghe, I've never heard of a treasure that can restrain your stargazing art. What a joke. Do you think I'm easy to bully? Li Xinghe said unhappily, If your highness doesn't believe me, you can find someone else to do the divination. My talent is shallow, and I'm no match for her artifact. Please forgive me for being powerless. As he spoke, he waved his hands and began channeling. He closed his eyes and ignored the two of them. Tang Yi said, Tell me clearly, what's the backlash from your stargazing art? Li Xinghe helplessly opened his eyes and said, A treasure that can restrain the stargazing art is extremely rare. It must be something from Outland. Something from Outland? Tang Yi frowned. What item from Outland? Li Xinghe shook his head. Who knows? It's not like I'll tell anyone about it. Tang Yi saw that he was not lying. If that's the case, it doesn't matter who I find to do the divination with? Yes. Li Xinghe nodded. If I can't predict it, no one else in the world can. So, Your Highness, you should give up. Tang Yi scoffed. I didn't expect this fella to be so difficult to deal with. A treasure like Outland would never be given to anyone. Chu Li must have guarded against him, which was why he gave Xiao Qi such a treasure to prevent anyone from predicting her whereabouts. Li Xinghe said, I advise Your Highness not to go against Chu Li. Tang Yi smirked. I must avenge this. I heard that the Stargazing Pavilion wants the Divine Astra Jade Badge. The Divine Astra Jade Badge? Li Xinghe's expression changed. Tang Yi chuckled when he saw his expression. Seems like it's true. Li Xinghe said, The Divine Astra Jade Badge is hidden in the Church of the Divine Blood and no one can touch it. Did your highness obtain it? Tang Yi nodded slowly. Of course. Li Xinghe looked at him in shock. How's that possible? Why not? Tang Yi said. The Church of the Divine Blood and Chu Li are irreconcilable, but unfortunately, we can't avenge him. Chu Li and I will go to the Church of the Divine Blood and give them something in exchange. Naturally, we'll obtain the Divine Astra Jade Badge. Li Xinghe pondered. Now that he put it that way, it was possible. The Divine Astra Jade Badge was useless to the Church of the Divine Blood, but they refused to exchange it with the star-gazing pavilion to prevent it from growing. Chu Li killed Wei Wu Wei, who had the highest chance of becoming an enlightened master. The Church of the Divine Blood's hope of reviving was destroyed. Then, they were brutally killed by Chu Li and were forced to seal their mountain. It was the first humiliation in 1,000 years. The Church of the Divine Blood's hatred for Chu Li was irreconcilable. They were willing to give up the Divine Astra Jade Badge if they had the chance to kill Chu Li. They would rather let the star-gazing pavilion grow stronger than to kill Chu Li. In addition to Tang Ye's identity as a prince, it would be easy for them to do so if they had enough items in exchange. If you have the Divine Astra Jade Badge, can you predict Shao Qi's whereabouts? Tang Yi asked slowly. Li Xinghe frowned and thought about it. He nodded slowly. I can try. If you can't, I'll take back the Divine Astra Jade Badge. Tang Yi scoffed. It's impossible to remember the contents of the badge. You must use it now. You should give up on it. All right. Li Xinghe nodded with difficulty. Even if he died and was killed by Chu Li, the Divine Astra Jade Badge would remain in the Star-Gazing Pavilion. The Star-Gazing Pavilion would grow stronger in the near future. It could even be on par with Goddess Attraction Mountain. In that case, he would not disappoint the Star-Gazing Pavilion. Tang Yi took out a jade badge from his inner pocket. This jade badge was different from ordinary jade. It was the color of the sky and had a gentle luster. It was as if there was a clear spring flowing in it. It was indescribably moist, and one could not help but want to touch it. Li Xinghe's eyes suddenly lit up. He was stuck to the jade badge and could no longer pull it away. Tang Yi smiled when he saw Li Xinghe's reaction. He quickly hid his smile and slowly handed it to Li Xinghe. Li Xinghe received it with both hands. His eyes were filled with infatuation. He had put in so much effort, spent so much energy, probed and sneaked around. He had used all kinds of methods, but failed to obtain it. Finally, he had obtained it today. He was overjoyed to finally have it. How is it? Is it the real Divine Astra Jade Badge? Tang Yi asked calmly. Li Xinghe stared at the blue jade badge and nodded. It's real. He knew it was real when he saw its unique expression. Tang Yi asked, can you predict Shao Qi's whereabouts now? Chapter 1506. She had spent so much effort and used almost all of her strength, yet she was still unable to obtain it. However, Tang Yi had obtained it so easily. This was simply the greatest irony. A prince was a prince after all. He had power that ordinary people could not imagine. He had always looked down on the princes and nobles, thinking that they were just SOSO and that only martial arts and the stargazing technique mattered. Now it seemed like he was wrong. Sometimes the power of influence was stronger than martial arts. Sometimes martial arts was more important, and sometimes power was more important. He had to grasp both sides. Tang Yi said, if you can calculate Shao Qi's whereabouts, this will belong to the Stargazing Pavilion. If you can't, I'll have to take it back. Take a look. Li Xinghe nodded. He collected his thoughts and ignored his injuries. He held the blue jade pendant with both hands, and a blue light suddenly burst out. An invisible ray of light penetrated between Li Xinghe's eyebrows. Li Xinghe's expression changed. Sometimes he was in pain, sometimes he was happy, sometimes he was sad, and sometimes he was angry. Tang Yi and Su Shishing stared at his face with great interest. Your Royal Highness, he won't go astray, will he? Su Shishing asked carefully. His voice was soft as he was afraid of disturbing Li Xinghe. It did not matter if Li Xinghe went astray, but it was their matter. If they delayed it, His Royal Highness would be furious. Tang Yi scoffed. No, it seems like the cosmic jade medallion is useful to him. It's a pity that he got it for free. Your Royal Highness, as long as we can get rid of him, what's the big deal about the 10 cosmic jade medallions? Su Shirshing asked. That makes sense. Tang Yi nodded. Time passed slowly. An hour later, Li Xinghe slowly opened his eyes. His eyes emitted a blue ray that was as sharp as a knife. Tang Yi and Su Shirshing could not help but avoid his gaze. How is it? Su Shirshing asked. Li Xinghe nodded slowly. As expected of the cosmic jade medallion. Can you calculate Xiao Qi's location? Su Shirshing asked. Li Xinghe nodded. There's a high chance. Are you still not confident? Su Shirshing asked in disappointment. Tang Yi's face darkened as he glared at him. Li Xinghe said calmly, Your Highness, there's no need to be anxious. Since I've accepted the Heavenly Star Jade Medallion, I will not slack off and will definitely do my best. I'm indeed not confident right now. I will only know after I try. All right, then let's give it a try. I hope you give me good news. Otherwise, I'll immediately take back the Heavenly Star Jade stamp and destroy it in front of you. Tang Yi said coldly. Li Xinghe's expression changed slightly. This move was truly vicious, as it directly struck his vitals. It seemed that the schemes of the imperial family's descendants could not be underestimated. Their every move was ruthless and precise, and impossible to guard against. Just as Tang Yi had said, the contents of the Heavenly Star Jade Order couldn't be memorized. One could only look at it. Once they looked at it, they would immediately forget it. If they wanted to cultivate, they could only use the Heavenly Star Jade Order to cultivate. To him, the Heavenly Star Jade stamp was the hope of advancing a step further. If he could successfully cultivate the Heavenly Star Jade stamp, he might be able to reach the Heaven Man transformation realm. At that time, even a Heavenly God realm expert would not be able to do anything to him. On the other hand, if he were to destroy the Heavenly Star Jade stamp, then it would be no different than cutting off all hope for him, and it would be even more painful than killing him. When he thought about this, his desire for the Heavenly Star Jade stamp grew stronger. He stared deeply at the blue jade and said in a deep voice, Don't worry, Your Royal Highness. He closed his eyes again and held the Heavenly Star Jade stamp tightly with both hands. The Heavenly Star Jade stamp was flickering continuously, and a warm blue brilliance was circulating endlessly. Tang Yi paced around with his hands behind his back. He glanced at Li Xinghe from time to time, feeling anxious. Li Xinghe could be said to be his hope. If he could not predict Xiao Qi's location, then he could forget about his revenge. Su Shirshing whispered, Your Royal Highness, if he can predict Xiao Qi's location, maybe he can predict Chu Li's location too? Tang Yi frowned at him and scoffed coldly. Shut up. He could tell at a glance that Su Shirshing was setting a trap for Li Xinghe. Su Shirshing smiled embarrassedly. I just feel that the Heavenly Star Jade stamp is more powerful than we thought. It's fine as long as I can predict Xiao Qi's location. I'm not that greedy. Tang Yi scoffed. Yes, I was greedy. Su Shirshing nodded and took a step back. Tang Yi glared at him. He had always turned a blind eye to these little tricks. If his subordinates were harmonious, he would feel uneasy. It was normal for them to plot and scheme against each other, and he could easily control them. Pooh! Li Xinghe suddenly spat out another mouthful of blood. He struggled to open his eyes and slowly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He smiled bitterly. Chu Li, you're amazing. Is Chu Li that powerful? Su Shirshing laughed. He's just a grandmaster, not an enlightened master. Although he's not a heavenly god, he's even harder to deal with than one. Li Xinghe shook his head and sighed. I might not have been able to divine the whereabouts of a celestial god, but the backlash shouldn't have been so severe. What's going on? Su Shirshing asked curiously. Is it because he has a treasure? He cultivates some sort of secret technique. Li Xinghe sighed. It's a secret technique similar to the stargazing art. That's why there's such a strong backlash. I've truly experienced it. He's a formidable opponent. Young, gather. Retreating, Yi Huang Qin Sun Squid Bow Fierce, Manjade Navel of the world. No matter how powerful Chu Li was, he had to eliminate him. This also made him realize why Chu Li was able to find him and cripple him so easily. Li Xinghe said, "Your Royal Highness, I've managed to divine Shao Qi's whereabouts. Although it's a little vague, it shouldn't be wrong." "Good." Tang Yi smiled and praised him. "As expected of the Celestial Jade Badge." "Yes." Li Xinghe grinned. "With such a generous gift from your Royal Highness, I've become Chu Li's sworn enemy. Of course, I'll do my best to assist your Royal Highness." "Your Royal Highness, your top priority isn't to divine Shao Qi's whereabouts, but to conceal your own." Tang Yi frowned. "Does he dare to kill me?" Li Xinghe shook his head. "He could divine your Royal Highness's whereabouts, so it's very likely that he could divine your Royal Highness's plans. Who knows, he might be planning to kill your Royal Highness now." "How dare he?" Tang Yi scoffed. Su Shixing hesitated for a moment before he whispered, "Your Royal Highness, you must be on guard. Since Chu Li dared to cripple your Royal Highness, he was not afraid of killing your Royal Highness. After all, he was going to be hunted by the Emperor. Since he managed to escape from the Emperor previously, he might not be afraid of the Emperor anymore and might kill your Royal Highness again." "Tell me, what do you have in mind?" Tang Yi asked impatiently. Li Xinghe said, "I have a secret artifact that can block Chu Li's divine divination." "Oh?" Tang Yi cast a sidelong glance at him. Li Xinghe smiled. "With this secret artifact, Chu Li won't be able to see your Royal Highness's whereabouts and actions. Only then will your Royal Highness have a chance of succeeding. Otherwise, he might have predicted this and set up a trap for your Royal Highness." "All right, what secret artifact?" Tang Yi scoffed. "The Celestial Stone." Li Xinghe said, "With the Celestial Stone, your Royal Highness's aura can be concealed. Chu Li won't be able to do anything to you then." "All right, what are the conditions?" Tang Yi scoffed. Li Xinghe smiled. "I heard that there's a Heaven's Power Compass in the Imperial family's secret vault. I'll send someone to fetch it for you," Tang Yi said. Chapter 1507. He was overjoyed. The Tiangang Compass was an ancient artifact that was only recorded in the secret books of the Stargazing Pavilion. With the help of the Tiangang Compass, his stargazing art would be even more powerful, and his calculations would be twice the result with half the effort. To others, the Tiangang Compass was not worth mentioning, but to the disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion, it was a divine object. He did not expect to obtain it so easily. The wonders of power were beyond words. He really needed to think about how to help Tang Yi come up with a plan to prevent him from being easily destroyed by Chu Li. As long as Tang Yi was alive and well, they would be able to continuously benefit from him, which would benefit the Stargazing Pavilion and strengthen it. The Heavenly Star Jade Stamp and the Heavenly Dipper Compass were important treasures to the Stargazing Pavilion. With them, the Stargazing Pavilion's power would increase tremendously, allowing them to do many things that they couldn't normally do. Tang Yi said, "Now, tell me about Shao Qi's whereabouts." Li Xinghe nodded with a smile. He got up and carefully put the Heavenly Star Jade Stamp into his bosom. Then he walked to the stone wall at the side and lightly tapped it 3 times. Rumble! A stone cabinet appeared at the side with a few antique artifacts on it. Tang Yi glanced at it and turned his eyes away. He didn't think much of it. For others, these antiques were all treasures and priceless, but he was too lazy to look at them. There were many of them in the prince's mansion, and there were also many in the imperial treasury. He was tired of looking at them. Li Xinghe took out a small black stone from above. It was the size of a thumb, and no one picked it up when it fell to the ground. It was too common. On the other hand, Li Xinghe carefully picked it up and carefully examined it. Reluctance could be seen in his eyes as he sighed. This celestial stone is rare in the world, and there might only be 1 or 2 of them. It's very likely that Shao Qi has this item with her, which shows how wonderful it is. I really can't tell. Tang Yi nodded nonchalantly. I'll just have to hold on to it. Won't Chu Li be able to divine me? Yes. Li Xinghe nodded and slowly handed it over with a pained expression. Your Highness, don't underestimate it. Don't drop it. I know, I know. Tang Yi took it and put it in his arms. This concerns my life. How can I lose it? You should tell me now, where is Shao Qi? Li Xinghe glanced at Su Shixing. Su Shixing was startled. He pointed at himself, and then outside. Li Xinghe nodded lightly. Su Shixing's face darkened, and he glared at him angrily. Do you think I will leak the secret? Li Xinghe said, you don't have a star stone to protect you. Chu Li might use you to deduce His Royal Highness' whereabouts and actions if you leak this information. Therefore, you mustn't listen to this. You? Su Shixing snorted angrily. Tang Yi waved his hand impatiently. Go, wait outside the cave. Don't eavesdrop. Yes. Su Shixing cupped his fists resentfully, turned around, and strode out of the cave. He came out of the cave and saw the guards who were bored to death. When they saw Su Shixing coming out, they quickly gathered around him and asked about the situation. Su Shixing wasn't in a good mood. With a sullen face, he recounted the previous situation, but he didn't exaggerate. Everyone immediately felt the same hatred towards Li Xinghe. They were extremely dissatisfied with his arrogance and wanted nothing more than to teach him a lesson. A moment later, Tang Yi walked out of the cave in satisfaction. He waved his hand at Li Xinghe, who was behind him. You don't have to come out. I'll give it a try. If it really works and kills Shao Qi, I'll naturally send the Heaven Power Compass to you. Then I'll wait for the good news, Your Royal Highness. Li Xinghe cupped his fists and smiled. Tang Yi waved his hand and strode away in high spirits. Su Shixing quickly went forward and asked softly, Your Royal Highness, did you really find Shao Qi's whereabouts? Yes, this Li Xinghe does have some ability. Tang Yi nodded and strode down the mountain with an impatient look. Su Shixing said, Your Royal Highness, be careful of Li Xinghe. You can't be careless. Why don't we send a few people to guard the foot of the mountain and see if he'll send a message to Chu Li? Ha, don't worry. Tang Yi scoffed. He's very concerned about the Heaven Power Compass, and he has the Heavenly Astral Jade Badge. It'll be useless no matter how much information he sends. Immediately gather your men and call all the best men over. Your Royal Highness, how many people do you need? Su Shixing could only give up and asked reluctantly. Tang Yi thought about it. 100. Su Shixing shook his head helplessly. Your Royal Highness, we don't have that many top-notch masters anymore. That's all. Tang Yi frowned and stared at him. Even 100 are gone? We can gather 100 ordinary masters, but not 100 top-notch masters, Su Shixing replied. How many do you have? About 40. All right then, 40 it is. It's better to have nothing than to have something shoddy. Yes, I'll send the message now. Where should we meet? Tang Yi took out a letter from his inner pocket and passed it to him. Pass the message in this to them, but you can't read it. Everyone else can. Only I can't read it, Su Shixing asked helplessly. Your Royal Highness, do you really believe what Li Xinghe said? There's no harm in being careful, Tang Yi said. You're my confidant after all. Su Shixing smiled. I won't read it then. Tang Yi nodded in satisfaction. Go. Wait for me in the Imperial residence. You won't be participating in this mission. Yes. Su Shixing took the letter and strode away. Shao Qi woke up from her deep meditation. She opened her eyes and realized that she was in the main room of a small courtyard. The flawless moonlight shone on the paper window, illuminating the room. She could clearly see that the furniture was exquisite. This small courtyard was the best courtyard and the largest in Jiming town. The courtyard was decorated with fake mountains and rocks. The winding path led to a secluded place. It was unusually elegant, and everything was a work of ingenuity. Shao Qi did not care much about money. She had never been short of money. She stayed in this courtyard to save herself from trouble, not to enjoy life. No matter how good this courtyard was, it could not compare to the High Duke's public house. She pushed the door open and went to the center of the courtyard. She stood there quietly with a long sword in her hand. A bright moon hung in the night sky. The stars were dim, and its light shone on the ground. Bathing in the clear light, she felt a little unsettled for a moment. She left the imperial residence of King and once again to continue her journey to train her heart. It had been 5 days since she last saw Chuli. She did not know what he was doing now and whether he was with Lu Yurong. She smiled faintly when she thought of this. She did not feel jealous or angry. The regal sword scripture was really affecting her, and the influence was getting deeper. When they first got married, she still felt upset and couldn't help but overthink things. But now, when she thought about it, she was no longer affected. Her heart was as still as water, as if she was looking at a stranger's affairs. Everything was not reflected in her heart. If this continued, even if Chuli left her, he would not feel sad. Was the regal sword scripture really that powerful? She suddenly frowned. Her white clothes fluttered as she leaped to the roof and scanned the surroundings. Under the moonlight, 2 men in black flew over the roof. They were silent, and in the blink of an eye, they were near. Xiaoqi was not worried. She landed in her courtyard and gently shook her long sword. There was a faint sound. She was calm as she quietly looked at the 2 men in black in front of her. They covered their faces with black scarves. Their eyes were so bright that no one dared to look at them directly. Chapter 1508. Xiaoqi's mind raced as she tried to figure out which side they were from. Although there were only 2 of them, their strength was tyrannical. They were definitely not ordinary grandmasters, so she needed to be careful. Moreover, she felt a chill in her heart as she sensed danger. She did not say anything and only stared into their eyes, trying to see through their thoughts. As grandmasters, it was not easy to see through them. Although she could see through people's hearts, it was a little tiring. Xiaoqi, one of the men in black, asked with a hoarse voice. Xiaoqi nodded lightly. That's good. Die. The man in black shouted and swung his palm 5 meters away. Xiaoqi dodged it lightly and said, People from Fairy's capital? The other man in black punched from afar. Both of their fist and palm energy were powerful. Before the palm energy reached their bodies, the sand and stones on the ground were already flying. The flowers and plants were uprooted and swept far away. In the blink of an eye, everything was gone. Xiaoqi secretly nodded. These 2 were indeed rare masters, but they were far from being her opponents. The 2 men in black punched again. After 10 moves, they recognized the gap between them. Xiaoqi did not make a move and only dodged them easily. You forced us to do this. One of the men in black shouted hoarsely. His body suddenly expanded, and then his moves were like lightning. He quickly approached Xiaoqi and attacked with his palm. Xiaoqi was always cautious and did not easily accept their attacks. She had to see the real situation first. People who rushed up like this usually had something up their sleeves. No one wanted to die. Even if they looked weak, they must have a trump card. She could not be careless. She would often be taken advantage of by others if she accepted their attacks. As long as she did not accept their attacks, she would not be able to use her skills. Seeing that the man in black had used his secret skill, Xiaoqi became even more cautious. She did not dare to take the attack head-on. As he closed in on her, she increased her speed and easily dodged his attack. The other man in black saw this and also used his secret skill. His body suddenly increased in size, his speed was as fast as lightning, and his skill was twice as deep. Unfortunately, Xiaoqi could still easily avoid it. Her light body technique was superb. After 20 moves, the 2 still did not succeed, so they turned around and left. Xiaoqi did not chase after them. She looked at them thoughtfully. Suddenly, she took out a jade talisman and gently crushed it. The jade talisman shattered, and a beam of light shot into the sky. Then, it spread out and disappeared into the void. The next moment, Chuli suddenly appeared beside her and looked at her with a smile. He casually wrapped his arm around her slender and supple waist. He did not rush to speak, but the omniscient mirror had already enveloped their surroundings. His expression didn't change, but he was secretly furious. He saw that the 40 top-notch experts had already surrounded the entire courtyard. They were a mile away, and all of them had restrained their auras, making it difficult to detect them. He was surprised that Xiaoqi could sense his presence and had crushed a jade talisman to summon him. Xiaoqi sniffed the air lightly, but there was no unusual fragrance. Chuli smiled. Lu Yurong has returned to Goddess Attraction Mountain. I won't be cultivating there. Xiao Qi scoffed. It's all right. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. You've done well this time. You should have called me over in time. Don't go into battle yourself and dirty your hands. I don't think it's appropriate. It should be a master from the Fu dynasty, Xiao Qi said. Through her observation and senses, she finally determined that it was a grandmaster from the Fu dynasty. She instantly became vigilant. Once the Fu dynasty's masters were mobilized, there would be more than 2 of them. There were many masters from the Fu dynasty. Just like how they ambushed Chu Li, they must use the same method to deal with Xiao Qi, Chu Li's wife. Xiao Qi could handle 2, but not 100. She was not as capable as Chu Li, so she would not force herself. She did not want to make things worse, so she simply called for Chu Li's help. Chu Li nodded. Madam, you're a master from the Fu dynasty. I didn't look for him, but he sent himself to his death. Tang Yi? Xiao Qi asked. Chu Li nodded. It's him. I'm going to kill him this time. It's too dangerous. Xiao Qi frowned. The Fu dynasty's emperor, Tang Haoyan, was an enlightened master and one of the top enlightened masters. Chu Li could escape from the Ji dynasty's emperor, but he might not be able to escape from Tang Haoyan. He would not be as lucky every time. Chu Li said, It'll be more dangerous if I don't kill him. I'll send you back first. Huh? Tang Yi laughed out loud. He rushed to the top of the courtyard's wall like a gust of wind and looked down at the 2. Chu Li, you 2 really love each other. Don't say that I'm a pervert. You're the same. Chu Li frowned at him. Tang Yi laughed. I say, Third Lady Xiao, why don't you come back to the imperial residence with me and be my woman? Chu Li's face darkened. He sneered. Looks like you're courting death. So what if I'm courting death? Tang Yi laughed. Do you have the guts to kill me? Chu Li frowned at him. Tang Yi's smile was twisted and maniacal, sending chills down people's spines. Tang Yi suddenly waved his hand. Go! 10 men in black rushed out and surrounded Chu Li and Xiao Qi in the courtyard. Chu Li frowned as he looked at the 10 men in black. They were expressionless and had lifeless eyes. He was shocked. These 10 men were death warriors, and they were grandmasters. It was almost impossible for a grandmaster to become a death warrior. Chu Li wondered how Tang Yi did it. Tang Yi laughed. Chu Li, didn't you want to kill me? All right, let's see who dies first. Chu Li suddenly flashed and escaped from the 10 men's encirclement. He appeared beside Tang Yi. Tang Yi immediately fell from the wall. He was furious. He did not expect his foolproof plan to fail. Chu Li appeared before Xiao Qi was killed and completely ruined his plan. His crazy anger and hatred stopped him from turning around and leaving. He might as well fight to the end. Since Chu Li did not dare to kill him, he would kill Xiao Qi no matter how many people died today. He wanted Chu Li to taste the pain. Chu Li suddenly flashed and disappeared from the spot. The original position was now filled with hidden weapons, densely packed together. He flashed again. He wanted to send Xiao Qi away and then kill Tang Yi. It was too dangerous to kill Tang Yi with Xiao Qi. If Tang Yi died, Tang Haoyan would appear immediately. Under that situation, he might not be able to protect Xiao Qi. Therefore, to ensure that nothing went wrong, he sent Xiao Qi away first. Just as he was about to enter the void, a palm suddenly appeared behind him and hit his back. Bang! He felt as if he was struck by lightning. His body trembled and froze. The palm was sudden and strangely fast. There was no warning. Bang! Xiao Qi spat out a mist of blood. Her face was suddenly covered with a layer of golden powder. Her eyes were dim and scattered, and the flame of life was quickly extinguished. Chu Li was furious. He roared in his mind. All the gods, Buddhas, and demons in the void of his mind moved. Pairs of Buddha's eyes opened, and the void of his mind was filled with lotus flowers. The Buddha's scriptures rumbled continuously. Snap! There seemed to be the sound of an arrow breaking in his body. He suddenly regained his ability to move. He did not care about the injuries on his body and suddenly dodged the palm that followed. He took out a jade bottle and opened the stopper. He then dodged the next palm and poured out a spirit blessing pill from the jade bottle and stuffed it into Xiao Qi's mouth. Bang! His back was hit again. He spat out an arrow of blood and suddenly disappeared. Chapter 1509. The next moment, Chu Li appeared on the cliff above the Valley of Ten Peaks. Sun Mingwe was already there, her white robe fluttering like snow. Her face was covered with a white veil, revealing only her eyes. She was clear and cold. Not a speck of dust could be seen on her body. She looked like a fairy from the Gushi Mountain. She saw Chu Li suddenly appearing, holding Shao Qi. His face was pale, and his breath was weak. Shao Qi had already fainted. Her face was pale, and she was barely breathing. She was about to die. Chu Li had been using spiritual energy to repair Shao Qi's internal organs, but Tang Haoyan's palm force was constantly destroying her body. One was repairing while the other was destroying. With the help of the spirit blessing pill, Shao Qi would not die for a while. When he saw Sun Mingwe, Chu Li quickly reached out. Sun Mingwe stepped in front of him and asked, "Tang Haoyan has appeared?" Chu Li nodded and held Sun Mingwe's hand tightly. "He'll be here soon." As soon as he finished speaking, Tang Haoyan appeared in front of them. He was still wearing a bright yellow robe, full of masculinity. His eyes were like an eagle's as he stared at them. Chu Li scoffed. "Your Majesty, do you dare to kill me?" "Why wouldn't I?" Tang Haoyan scoffed, his eyes bright. Chu Li said, "Your Majesty, you should know that my master's anger is not easy to bear. If I die, I'm sure your sons won't survive. When that happens, the Fu dynasty may not be ruled by the Tang family." "How arrogant. Zhou Dunli isn't that capable. You were the one who wanted to hurt my son first. That's why I had no choice but to act." Tang Haoyan scoffed. "Do I have to watch you kill my son?" "Your Majesty, your words are ridiculous." "What did I act?" Chu Li said coldly. He and Sun Mingwe held each other's hands, and their inner force was connected. The rich force flowed like a river and quickly entered Shao Qi's body, expelling the palm force that was trying to devour Tang Haoyan. Tang Haoyan did not use the soul-tracking palm this time. He knew that it was useless against Chu Li. This time, the palm energy was vicious and overbearing. In just a short moment, Shao Qi's internal organs had been severely damaged. If it were not for the endless spiritual energy to restore her organs and the efficacy of the spirit blessing pill, Shao Qi's fragrant soul would have already gone to the netherworld. Tang Haoyan stared at Chu Li, then slowly looked at Sun Mingwe. Sun Mingwe looked at him indifferently, not revealing her emotions. Tang Haoyan sneered. "We have an agreement with Zhou Dunli that we will not take the initiative to kill you, but if you provoke us, then don't blame me for killing you. Zhou Dunli will have nothing to say." Chu Li frowned at him. Tang Haoyan looked at Sun Mingwe. "Holy Lady of the Holy Church of Light, how dare you?" Sun Mingwe's heart sank. She could guess what Tang Haoyan meant. He could not take the initiative to kill Chu Li, but he dared to take the initiative to kill Chu Li. Even if Zhou Dunli would protect the Holy Church of Light, Chu Li might not really turn against Tang Haoyan if Chu Li died. After all, their relationship was not that close. Chu Li sneered. "Your Majesty, do you know who she is?" "Just your lover," Tang Haoyan said indifferently. "Zhou Dunli has never been interested in women, so he might not have a good impression of your lovers. If I kill her, maybe it will be in line with Zhou Dunli's wishes, so that you can focus on cultivation." Chu Li frowned and said, "Then let's see what your Majesty is capable of." He knew that it was useless to say anything more. Instead, he would let Tang Haoyan know his weakness. Tang Haoyan looked deeply at Shao Qi, then at Sun Mingwe. Suddenly, he smiled and disappeared. Chu Li's body tensed up. He took a step to the side and let go of Sun Mingwe's palm to launch a heavenly king palm. Bang! He flew out like a kite with a broken string. He grabbed Shao Qi with one hand and Sun Mingwe with the other. Sun Mingwe felt her waist tighten as Chu Li grabbed her. Then, they flew out together and landed in the ravine. Chu Li channeled his inner energy through his palm and into her waist. Instantly, their auras were connected again. She punched out fiercely. Bam! Tang Haoyan caught the punch above their heads, and his falling body stopped. He suddenly disappeared, and appeared 10 meters below them in the next moment. He walked in a void as if he was walking on flat ground. He used a mysterious step technique and pushed his palms upward. Suddenly, an extremely cold aura rushed over like a gentle, chilly wind. Chu could not move his hands. His stomach bulged and deflated as he exhaled a long white breath. The white breath spread out in front of him. The cold force suddenly retreated in front of him, as if it was hit by an invisible force. Tang Haotian disappeared and appeared behind Xiao Qi in the next moment. He hit her back with his palm. Chu Li pulled Xiao Qi and dodged it. However, the next palm was aimed at Chu Li. Chu Li could not avoid it, but he did not let go to face it. He could only watch as the palm pressed against his chest. Bang! Suddenly, a white palm hit his chest and collided with Tang Haotian's right palm. Chu Li smiled. However, Tang Haotian continued to attack Xiao Qi. Sun Mingyue tried her best to protect them and was injured by Tang Haotian's palm. The four of them suddenly sped up and fell into the 10 ultimate vitality lock formation. They were only left with the spiritual energy from the Outland. Although Sun Mingyue was injured, she felt the pressure lessen. Tang Haotian's strength was greatly reduced in the 10 ultimate vitality lock formation. He lost 30 to 40% of his power, leaving only 60 to 70%. Bang! Chu Li and the other two fell into the pool. Tang Haotian leaped out and stood 40 feet away from the pool. He stared at them and frowned. It seemed like he could not kill them again this time. It was such a pity. This was a great opportunity. When Chu Li saw the evil dark dragon coming silently, he patted its ugly and fierce head and brought Xiao Qi and Sun Mingyue into its cave. Then he put Xiao Qi down. In just a short while, Tang Haotian's palm force had been dispelled. The spirit blessing pill was more than half effective. In addition to the recovery of spiritual energy, although Xiao Qi's injuries were serious, her life was no longer in danger. She lay quietly on the ground while Chu Li looked at her pitifully. All right, we'll see when we get back. It's time to deal with Tang Haotian, Sun Mingyue said impatiently. Chu Li nodded slowly. He turned around and left with Sun Mingyue. Soon, they leaped out of the pool and performed their secret skills in the air. Their bodies did not change. Only the supreme King Kong in the void of their minds opened its eyes and formed a strange hand seal. Black flames began to appear under its feet. They were formed by the nameless fire. This was a secret skill recorded in the supreme King Kong scripture. It triggered the nameless fire in one's body and mind to burn one's body, thereby stimulating the body's potential. Only one attack was powerful enough. Chu Li and Sun Mingyue knew that Tang Haotian wanted to kill Sun Mingyue. If they could not injure or kill him, both Sun Mingyue and Xiao Qi would be in danger. An enlightened master like Tang Haotian would be too scary when he went crazy. The black flames burned the supreme King Kong. The two of them felt the force in their bodies begin to converge and gradually flow into their palms. Their skills doubled, and they looked more normal. Tang Haotian vaguely felt that something was wrong. The two of them were too calm, so he suddenly thought of retreating. As enlightened masters, they trusted their instincts the most. Even if they felt something was wrong, they would not take risks. Therefore, they turned around and flew up. The two of them flew up and caught up with Tang Haotian in the blink of an eye. When Tang Haotian saw their speed, he realized that something was wrong and quickly dodged to the side. Bang! The two of them hit the void with their palms. Tang Haotian did not manage to dodge the two palms. Bang! He flew out like a stone and crashed into the stone wall beside him. Instantly, he fell limply. The power of this attack was shocking. Tang Haotian was seriously injured. Chu Li and Sun Mingyue also fell limply. After this attack, the two of them also disappeared. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.